My own teammates betrayed me and threw me at a 100-meter monster because I was the only ordinary man in the squad. Instead of dying, I awakened a vampire system. That system forced me to drink blood from one new thick adult woman every day. The first bite from each new woman made me stronger. The first woman was Sylvie, a gorgeous succubus. She offered me her neck, so I bit down. Strength increased by 1. The reward was random, 1 attribute point from each new living woman. Miss 1 Sunrise, and the system took 5 points back. This happened in 2025, after dimensional rifts filled Earth with monsters and a few humans became evolved. I was Garrett Durham, an ordinary porter with a disease that could stop my heart without warning. I kept taking suppression work because my younger sister depended on me. The system gave me one brutal question. Could I grow fast enough to hunt the captain who fed me to that monster before Sunrise started taking power away? To understand why I was drinking from an entire village, go back one night. Start with the mission where Kirk Redmond used me as bait. After the 2025 breach, monsters flooded Earth, normal weapons failed, and a few humans became evolved. I never did. During an early beast attack, my mother dragged my little sister and me from a collapsing shelter. She took the wound meant for us. "Live," my mother told me. "Protect your sister," promised her. Then rift decay started destroying my body. It could stop my heart without warning. My sister still needed rent and school money, so I joined Kirk's squad as porter and battlefield cleaner. The evolved carried weapons. I carried everything they did not want, touching their expensive uniforms. That night's Tier 1 assignment looked simple. Clear a nest near Ridgeway City and leave. The squad killed the first beasts. I hauled the packs and cleaned up. Then a pebble bounced beside my boot. The entire slope shook. Trees snapped beyond the nest. A massive head rose over the forest, followed by scales thick enough to turn military fire. A Tier 5 Titan Python had found us. Every evolved froze. Kirk froze with them. I was the dying porter, yet I moved first. "Drop the cores," I shouted. "Run!" Porter broke their panic. Packs dropped. Everyone ran. I turned too. Kirk's blade opened my chest from behind. I fell to one knee. He grabbed my collar while the Titan Python pushed through the trees. "You have rift decay," Kirk told me. "You could die next week anyway." He glanced at the escaping squad. "You're the only non-evolved member. One useless life buys the rest of us time." They all heard him. Nobody came back. Kirk threw me down the slope beneath the python's jaws and ran after them. That was the bargain bin captain's master plan. Feed the man who saved his squad from freezing, then call it leadership. The python opened its mouth. My mother's last words came back clearly. "Live! Protect your sister!" I dug my fingers into the mud and tried to crawl. My arms failed. The python struck. A red-gold circle opened beneath me. Ancient symbols spun through the mud. Light sealed Kirk's wound across my chest and pulled me down before the fangs closed. One heartbeat later, I landed on black stone inside an underground chamber. The forest was gone. The python was gone. My wound was gone. A ring of horned adult women surrounded the circle. One stepped forward and knelt. She was stunning. For one stupid second, I forgot the python had almost eaten me. "My lord, I am Sylvie Morn," she said. "I activated the ancient circle. I swear eternal loyalty, and Night Vale Village stands with me." A panel appeared beside her. "Sylvie Morn, Tier 3 Succubus. Follower affinity 88%. 100% affinity unlocks a unique reward." Then a voice spoke inside my head. "Vampire Ascension System activated. Compatible dying soul stabilized. Species evolved. Blood fiend." The circle had searched for a dying soul compatible with blood energy. It caught me at the python's mouth, and the system rebuilt my failing body with 50 baseline attribute points. Why it chose me beyond that remained unknown. I already had one useful answer. I could survive long enough to find Kirk. Sylvie moved closer. "If my lord desires comfort, my body and heart are yours." I tried to be respectful. I raised one hand. I should behave like a gentleman. Follower affinity decreased from 88% to 85%. I stared at the number. I had survived a Tier 5 python and immediately lost points for good manners. Amazing, truly elite decision-making from me. "No," I told Sylvie. "That came out wrong. You're the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Rejecting you was me being stupid." "Very interested. Follower affinity restored, 88%. Sylvie smiled again and touched her neck. "A blood fiend needs fresh energy," she said. "Please, drink from me." The system stated the rule before I moved. Blood assimilation available. First blood from each new living adult woman grants one random attribute point. One reward per target. I placed one hand behind Sylvie's shoulder and bit her neck. Warm blood touched my tongue. Power hit immediately. Strength increased by 1. Blood assimilation unlocked. Sylvie gripped my sleeve but did not pull away. When I released her, her affinity climbed another point. More importantly, my right hand crushed a stone cup by accident. One bite had already changed what my body could do. I looked past Sylvie at the rest of Night Vale Village. Every adult succubus in Night Vale Village looked back. Several were already adjusting their collars. You know where this was going. Every woman here forms one line, I announced. I take one sample from each of you. One time only. The chamber exploded into arguments. 3 succubi rushed the front. 2 claimed their families had served the village longer. Another offered to bring snacks if I let her go twice. The system only rewards the first bite, I told them. The snack offer remained on the table. I respected the hustle. Sylvie folded her arms. My lord, they're getting very close, gestured at the crowd. You summoned me into a village full of succubi. Sylvie lifted her chin. I was focused on saving our people. I nodded at the line. And now? Sylvie looked at the line. Now I regret making them organized. The first woman stepped forward. I sampled her, released her, and moved on. Agility increased by 1. The second offered her wrist instead of her neck. Spirit increased by 1. The third tried to lean against me after the bite until Sylvie peeled her away by the shoulders. Stamina increased by 1. The notifications kept coming. Strength, agility, spirit, endurance. Every new woman added one small piece, and the pieces stacked fast. After the 7th sample, one of the village elders knelt and tried to begin a formal blessing. 3 women behind her immediately complained that the ceremony was delaying their turns. I helped the elder stand. Bless me after the line finishes. The women cheered. Sylvie covered her face with one hand. A younger succubus pointed at the fading mark on Sylvie's neck. She received the first bite. Does that make her first wife? Sylvie answered before I could breathe. It makes me the summoner who saved our lord. So that's a yes? The woman asked. Sylvie's affinity rose by 1 point while she glared at her. The system had no respect for plausible deniability. I kept moving. One woman posed like it was a contest. Another asked whether courage earned bonus affinity. The system said no. She still looked proud. The women treated each bite like a sacred exchange. I treated the line like the most shameless training method ever approved by a supernatural interface. A nervous woman offered her wrist with both hands shaking. I kept the bite brief. Her shoulders loosened, and the next 2 women stepped forward without being called. That reaction settled the line faster than any speech. A taller succubus asked whether followers needed a separate oath. The system answered while the line advanced. Follower registration requires an eternal loyalty oath. Affinity measures attachment and trust. 100% grants a unique reward. The women nearest her immediately started whispering about oaths, rank, and who should go first. Sylvie silenced the argument with one look. Useful. Dangerous, very efficient. By the final sample, my senses had sharpened enough to hear whispers outside the chamber. My muscles felt packed with power. The heavy stone doors no longer looked heavy. 10 minutes earlier, Kirk's squad had called me dead weight. Now an entire supernatural village called me their fiend lord and competed over who helped me grow. That confidence upgrade was almost medically irresponsible. Sylvie stood taller with every notification and peeled away any woman who held my sleeve too long. The last succubus stepped away, and the system closed the harvest. Back on Earth, my younger sister, Autumn Durham, still needed me alive. Every point moved me closer to keeping the promise I made our mother. All current Night Vale Village targets have been assimilated. Repeat targets provide blood energy but no additional attribute reward, so the village could feed me again, but none of them could trigger another stat. I tested my new body in the village courtyard. A stone training pillar stood near the wall. Sylvie warned me it had survived several generations of demon attacks. I punched it once. The center cracked. The watching succubi cheered. One immediately asked whether I needed another sample to celebrate. Sylvie stepped between us. No, Sylvie told the woman. The woman glanced at me. Did our lord say no? Sylvie's smile became very polite. Our lord enjoys having a village left to rule. There it was. First follower politics, already speedrunning a civil dispute. The village prepared a room for me before midnight. The bed was soft, the door locked, and Sylvie had made her intentions easy to understand. She later admitted she visited that room wearing her most dangerous smile. She found an empty bed. I had slipped out through a side passage. A graveyard beyond Night Vale Village held dense death energy and a steady supply of low-tier monsters. Comfort could wait. Kirk was still alive, and temporary stat gains would not be enough for revenge. At the graveyard after midnight, blank-faced wraiths rose between broken stones. The first rushed me with both hands extended. I caught its wrist. That simple move felt better than any system panel. Before the summoning, lifting a heavy crate could trigger chest pain. Now I twisted, slammed the wraith into a marker, and crushed the dark core in its chest. Experience flooded in. 2 more emerged from the fog. One attacked high, the other swept low. I kicked the low one into an open grave, ducked the second, and drove my elbow through its core. The buried wraith clawed back up, so I dropped the stone marker on its head. Crude. Effective. Very on brand for my first night as a vampire. More wraiths followed the noise. I drew them between the graves, used the narrow paths to stop them surrounding me, and killed them one at a time. My level reached 8. Blood step unlocked. 2 short distance dashes per recovery cycle. I tested one charge. The world jerked, and I appeared 12 feet away before the fog closed behind me. Fast enough to cross a killing distance. Limited enough that wasting one would hurt. A bone cleaver buried itself where my head had been. 2 tier 2 grave butchers stepped from behind a mausoleum. They were twice the size of the wraiths, wrapped in burial cloth and carrying hooked weapons made from bone. 1 bloodstep charge remained. Both monsters charged. The first butcher swung low. I jumped the hook, but the second caught my shoulder with the flat of its cleaver and threw me through a headstone. My new body survived. My shoulder still screamed. Good! The system had given me power. Pain still collected its fee. The butchers separated to trap me between them. I let the closer one believe I was cornered. When its hook came down, I triggered my last bloodstep and appeared past its elbow. I ripped a spare bone knife from its belt and drove the blade through the joint behind its knee. The butcher collapsed. Its partner rushed to finish me. I pulled the fallen monster into the path. The cleaver sank into its back and stuck. That was the mistake I needed. I climbed the trapped weapon, kicked the second butcher across the jaw, and buried the stolen knife in its core. The first monster tried to rise. I tore free the cleaver and finished it with its partner's weapon. Both bodies hit the dirt. The graveyard went quiet. Level 11 reached. Crimson Grave unlocked. Blood Veil unlocked. Title earned Gravebreaker. The level ups also left several free attribute points. I pushed most into speed and stamina. Kirk had beaten me once because my body failed before I could act. I had no intention of giving him the same opening twice. I tested Blood Veil first. My aura dimmed, the nearby wraiths stopped tracking me, and even my footsteps softened against the gravel. Then I released the veil and raised one hand. Crimson Grave answered with 3 blood-red spikes that burst from the soil around a cracked headstone. The skill was fast, direct, and ugly. Perfect. I had gained a dash, a hiding skill, a battlefield restraint, and a title in one graveyard run. The former pack mule was building a toolkit. I'd barely finished enjoying that thought before the next notice replaced everything. Daily Blood Quest activated. Before sunrise, drink fresh blood from at least 1 new living adult woman. Failure penalty, -5 attribute points. The clouds east of the graveyard had already started turning gray. I had sampled every valid woman in the village. A woman-shaped wraith climbed from a nearby grave. For half a second, I thought the system had handed me an ugly solution. Its label appeared. Invalid target. Corrupted blood. Dead spirits do not qualify. The wraith lunged anyway. I used Crimson Grave for the first time, pinned it with 2 red spikes, and crushed its core. No quest completion appeared. I checked the village through the trees. Every living adult woman there had already triggered blood assimilation. Repeat blood could feed me, but the daily quest demanded somebody new. I had turned an entire succubus village into a stat harvest and created a supply crisis on the same night. New personal record. Then headlights cut through the graveyard fog. A black car turned onto the cemetery road. 2 silhouettes sat in front. Someone else waited in the back. I had minutes before sunrise, no valid woman left, and unknown hunters driving straight toward me. The black car rolled into the graveyard while dawn paled the eastern sky. I stood between 2 dead grave butchers with the daily quest still open. Whoever stepped out of that car would either save 5 attribute points or become a brand new problem. The front doors opened. 2 men in combat uniforms climbed out. Both were very male. My system offered no sympathy. Tragic. The men spread apart and aimed detection devices toward the graves. Their uniforms carried the crest of Scarlet Bastion, one of Ridgeway City's major evolved factions. Then the rear door opened. An adult woman stepped out with frost gathering beneath her boots. She was Twyla Hargrove, a gold lower ice, evolved and the leader of the 2-man capture team. She was gorgeous, furious by default, and strong enough to turn the entire cemetery into a skating problem. The system painted labels over all 3 hunters. The 2 men were yellow, manageable. Twyla's label was red, stronger than me. The color rule was simple. Green meant harmless. Yellow meant a possible fight. Red meant I should avoid being clever. Naturally, I used Bloodstep. Twyla had one hand on the car door when I vanished from the graves and appeared behind her. I caught her around the shoulders, pulled her back against me, and bit her neck before either subordinate could turn. Cold exploded through my mouth. So did the system notifications. Daily Blood Quest complete. Blood assimilation triggered. 1 random attribute increased. Twyla Hargrove. Follower affinity, 30%. I released her immediately. Twyla answered by blasting me through a headstone. Ice sealed around the broken stone before I hit the ground. She spun, covered the bite mark with one hand, and pointed the other at my chest. You've got 3 seconds to explain why I shouldn't freeze you solid, Twyla snapped. I pushed myself upright. Start with my name, Garrett Durham. Then remember you came here to capture me alive. Twyla covered the bite mark. That was before you bit me. Her affinity rose by 1 point. The system was basically live commentary on her denial. I stood slowly. Your numbers are disagreeing with your threat. Twyla's eyes narrowed. What numbers? I smiled. Private information. Frost spread another foot around her boots. 6 ice spears formed behind Twyla and pointed at my chest. She could have fired them through me. Instead, the spearheads widened into blunt restraints. Her mouth promised murder. Her power prepared a cage. I lifted both hands. See? You still want me alive. Twyla snapped her fingers. One restraint slammed around my ankle and froze me to the ground. Alive and comfortable are different services. The line was cold. The tiny affinity increase afterward was comedy. Good. The quest was complete. The woman who completed it now wanted my head. Clean solutions were apparently illegal in my life. One Scarlet Bastion subordinate raised his weapon. Team leader Hargrove, the target matches the rare blood race signal. We should restrain him before the sun rises. The second subordinate took 1 step toward me. Another engine roared down the cemetery road. A larger vehicle stopped behind Twyla's car, blocking the exit. A red detector on its hood pulsed toward me. The newcomers had followed the same rare blood race signal. 2 men emerged in expensive combat coats. The first was Callum Donovan, the younger heir of Apex Dominion. His family treated Ridgeway City's monsters, people, and property like additions to a private collection. The second man carried a deck of sharpened metal cards and stayed half a step behind him. Callum looked at my exposed fangs, then at the fresh bite mark on Twyla's neck. His smile widened. A rare vampire and an ice captain in the same graveyard, Callum said. Scarlet Bastion can keep the woman. Apex Dominion will take the creature. Twyla lowered her hand from her neck. I found him first, Callum laughed. You found property. Do not confuse that with ownership. There it was. The trophy collector had entered the chat. His label glowed orange above his head. Overwhelming. The card-throwing partner showed red. Twyla could kill the partner. Callum could kill all of us. So I gave Twyla a reason to make my problem hers. I walked behind her ice line and spoke loudly enough for Callum to hear. Only someone as beautiful and noble as team leader Hargrove deserves to claim me. Twyla glanced over her shoulder. Her affinity jumped. Callum's smile flattened. Twyla lifted her chin. You heard him. He's under Scarlet Bastion custody. That sounded warmer than custody, I told her. Twyla formed an ice blade beside my throat. Keep talking, Garrett. She used Garrett instead of creature. I counted that as progress. Callum stepped forward. My father collects rare bloodline beasts. Hand him over, and I may forget this little performance. Twyla answered with an ice storm. The card-throwing partner snapped both wrists. Metal cards spread into a spinning wall and sliced the nearest gravestones into slabs. Twyla stepped through the debris without slowing. Frost crawled over every card in mid-air. The partner jerked his hands back, trying to recall them. Too late! Twyla closed her fist. A giant ice rose erupted beneath him. Its petals folded shut and sealed the card user inside a clear frozen prison. His last expression stayed visible through the ice. He looked deeply offended that the woman he planned to rob had fought back. 1 enemy down. Callum did not even look worried. Twyla launched 3 ice lances at his chest. Callum slapped the first aside, caught the second, and used it to smash the third. Then he walked through the storm as though the cemetery belonged to his family too. Twyla formed a blade and cut for his throat. Callum shattered it with his bare hand, grabbed her wrist, and drove his shoulder into her chest. Twyla flew across the cemetery and hit the side of her car hard enough to bend the door. The frost around my ankle broke from the impact. Callum brushed ice from his sleeve. Gold lower, he said. He had let her strongest attacks land just to prove they did not matter. Arrogant, yes, also dangerous. The trophy collector could actually collect. Twyla forced herself upright. Blood touched the corner of her mouth. Callum was stronger. Twyla was bleeding. My blood step charges were low, and the sun had almost cleared the horizon. Then a pulse tightened behind my ribs. The follower bond. Sylvie could sense my location when danger spiked, and she had followed it out of Nightvale Village. A violet flash crossed the road. My first follower landed between the cars, saw Scarlet Bastion's 2 armed men, and reacted before asking questions. Sylvie's eyes glowed. Both subordinates turned to stone before either could aim. One froze with his mouth open. The other still held a restraint cable like he planned to arrest the situation through optimism. Twyla saw her team petrified and raised an ice blade again. Sylvie ignored the blade, the damaged car, and the stronger enemy. She ran straight past Twyla and jumped into my arms. My lord, Sylvie breathed. You disappeared, fought undead alone, and found another woman before I reached you. Adjusted my grip. That summary feels judgmental. Sylvie saw the bite mark on Twyla's neck. It's becoming more judgmental. Twyla pushed away from the damaged car. Get off him. Sylvie tightened both arms around me. You were trying to cage him. Twyla raised her ice blade. I was claiming him. 2 women were arguing over me while Callum prepared to kidnap all 3 of us. Look, I need you to understand how absurdly efficient this system was at creating problems. Callum appeared beside Twyla and backhanded her into the road. You can fight over the vampire after my father finishes studying him, Callum said. He pointed at Sylvie. The succubus comes too. She will make a fine bonus trophy. Sylvie's grip tightened. Callum reached for her. I used blood step. The dash carried Sylvie and me out of his grasp and into the grove beside the cemetery. My last charge vanished, and Callum's orange label followed through the trees. I needed Sylvie's affinity at 100. Her panel sat just below the finish line. No time for subtle romance. I set her against a tree and kissed her. Sylvie froze for half a heartbeat, then grabbed my collar and kissed me back. Follower affinity 99%. Callum walked into the grove and slow clapped. Wonderful, he mocked. The pet performs tricks before collection. I stepped in front of Sylvie. A wall of ice rose between us and Callum. Twyla stood at the edge of the grove, one hand pressed to her ribs. She had followed despite the hit. He's mine to capture, Twyla told Callum. You're leaving empty-handed. Callum struck the ice wall. Cracks raced across it. I looked back at Sylvie. Stay behind me. I won't let him take you. Her panel flashed. Follower affinity 100%. The ground shook. Crimson energy burst from my body and tore through the grove. The remaining frost vaporized. My heartbeat slowed while every sense sharpened beyond anything I had felt in Nightvale Village. Callum's orange label flickered. Then it turned green. His hand stopped halfway through the broken ice. That confidence lasted exactly 1 transformation. Then the system told me what Sylvie had unlocked. Unique follower reward received. Blood Sovereign form. Duration 10 minutes. Charge count 1. Temporary access granted to advanced Blood Fiend abilities. Callum took 1 step back. What are you? Opened my hand. The property you should have left alone. He attacked anyway. Of course he did. Men who introduce themselves through their father rarely develop survival instincts on schedule. Callum drove a gold-tier strike toward my chest. I caught his wrist. The impact split the ground beneath my feet. My arm did not move. Callum stared at our hands. He twisted, kicked at my knee, and drove his free elbow toward my throat. I let every attack land. Nothing changed. Then I squeezed his wrist. His knees hit the dirt. Callum tried to rise, so I slapped him across the grove. He tore through 2 trees, rolled back into the cemetery, and stopped beside the frozen card user he had treated as disposable backup. Twyla watched him crawl. Sylvie watched me. Callum watched his entire social ranking die in real time. Behind him, the ice rose shattered. The card-throwing partner burst free and hurled every metal card at my back. I raised one hand. A storm of crimson bats poured from my shadow. They swallowed the cards, crossed the grove, and hit the partner before he finished his boast. When the swarm lifted, only his skeleton remained standing. It collapsed one bone at a time. Bloodbat storm permanently acquired. Twyla lowered the hand pressed to her ribs and stared at the skeleton. Sylvie's affinity stayed locked at 100. Callum looked from the bones to me and finally remembered fear. My father runs Apex Dominion, he gasped. Kill me and my family will erase everything you love. Call your dad. The family strategy had arrived early. I lifted Callum by the throat. Good, I told him. He will know where to collect you. I carried him back through the cemetery, aimed toward the distant Ridgeway City skyline, and through. Callum crossed the road, the trees, and several miles of very expensive air. The system confirmed the kill before the echo reached us. A later kill report showed Callum had punched through Apex Dominion's front wall. He died in the most expensive room his family owned. Home delivery, no signature required. The Blood Sovereign timer kept counting down. Red light gathered over Sylvie's heart. A black-red seal spread across the front of her dress, bright enough for Twyla to see. Sylvie looked down. My lord, something is coming through. A sword hilt pushed out from the center of the seal. It passed through red light without cutting skin or cloth. Twyla took 1 step closer. What am I looking at? Good question. The system had opened its cursed equipment department early. I closed my hand around the hilt. Sylvie caught my wrist, flushed, then nodded. Take it, Sylvie said. I pulled. A black-red greatsword slid free as the seal collapsed into sparks. Sylvie staggered against me. Twyla stared at the weapon, then at Sylvie, then back at me. Sylvie pressed her palm to the vanished seal. It glowed once beneath her fingers, but her dress and skin stayed untouched. Twyla circled her, checked the empty air behind her, and found no sheath, portal, or sane explanation. Sylvie looked proud. Twyla looked offended by physics. The greatsword hummed with Sylvie's power in my hands. Garrett, Twyla demanded, what did you just pull out of her? Sylvie's affinity stayed locked at 100 while Twyla's expression kept getting worse. Temporary Soulforge preview activated. Exclusive equipment, Nightblood Greatsword. A follower at 100 affinity could create equipment tied to her power. Blood Sovereign form let me preview that future ability, but the sword would vanish when the form ended. I tested the edge against the ice around Twyla. One short slash cut through the frozen barrier, the outer layer of her combat uniform, and nothing else. Twyla stared down at the ruined clothing. Then she stared at me. Twyla said my name like a threat. Garrett! I lifted the sword. In my defense, the sword is new. Twyla pointed at her ruined uniform. That's a terrible defense. Her two subordinates remained petrified near the road. I carried Twyla deeper into the woods before Sylvie released them. Whatever happened next, her own men would not see their leader exposed and furious. Twyla fought my grip until I set her down behind a wall of trees. I placed the fading greatsword between us. You tried to capture me, I said. You know my face, my species, and where Sylvie came from. Callum's family will tear through both our factions looking for answers. Twyla crossed her arms over the torn uniform. So you're kidnapping me first? I planted the fading sword between us. My solution is an oath. Swear eternal loyalty. The system registers you as my follower, and then you can't sell me to Apex Dominion. Twyla's jaw tightened. You expect me to agree after biting me and destroying my clothes? I shook my head. No, I expect you to agree because Callum just proved what happens when our enemies think we stand alone. Twyla looked toward the road where her petrified men waited. Then she repeated Sylvie's oath through clenched teeth. Follower registered. Twyla Hargrove. Her affinity settled below Sylvie's. Twyla kept both fists closed and stared like she wanted to punch the system through my face. My Blood Sovereign form ended. The Nightblood Greatsword dissolved. Weakness hit my legs, and cold sweat ran down my back. I removed my coat and placed it around Twyla's shoulders before her men could be released. She gripped the collar closed. Follower affinity, 60%. Twyla caught me watching the invisible affinity panel. Do not mistake this for forgiveness. I adjusted the coat around her shoulders. I'd never insult 60% like that. Her expression sharpened. 60 what? I stepped back. Still private. The system opened a new notice while Sylvie argued with Twyla about who had the right to stand closer. Permanent progression route available. Crimson Prison Arena. Warning, arena injuries persist. Arena victories grant no normal experience. Exit remains locked until one floor is cleared. My 10-minute miracle was gone. Callum's death had put Apex Dominion on my trail, and temporary power would not survive the family response. The arena offered permanent strength. It also offered no safe way back out. Before dawn fully broke, Sylvie led me back to Nightvale Village. My Blood Sovereign charge was gone. Callum Donovan was dead, his family would eventually notice, and the Crimson Prison Arena notice still floated in my vision. The rules were ugly and simple. Arena victories gave no normal experience. Every injury followed me home. Once I entered, the exit stayed locked until one floor ended. Permanent power was waiting inside, so I entered. The village bedroom vanished, and I appeared in a circular preparation room beneath a red sky. Weapon icons covered one wall, buff icons covered another. Most weapons looked respectable. The respectable options included a reach-boosted spear, a sharper sword, and a hammer heavy enough to make my shoulder file a complaint. Then I saw the cucumber. Paralysis. Cucumber. No damage bonus. Successful contact may silence and paralyze the target. The system's cursed equipment department had officially opened for business. I selected it. For my one buff, I chose Armor Breaker. If the vegetable failed, I at least wanted it to fail through somebody's defenses. The preparation room opened into a packed arena. A horned announcer floated above the ring. Hadley Thornton was the Crimson Prison Arena's floor host, and her job was to introduce champions while enjoying my bad decisions. Hadley looked at the cucumber in my hand. The challenger rejected 6 real weapons, Hadley announced, and selected produce. The crowd roared. I prefer tactical produce, I called back. Hadley stared at me for one beat. Floor 1 may be shorter than expected. The opposite gate rose. Morella Crawford entered beneath a wave of black mist. She was a living adult banshee and the champion of Floor 1. She was also gorgeous, which was inconvenient because she had entered to kill me. Her dark dress moved through the mist without touching the ground. Her eyes stayed on the cucumber. Morella's mouth tightened. You entered my death arena holding that? I raised the cucumber. In my defense, it came highly recommended by nobody. Hadley dropped one hand. The match began. Morella screamed. The sound passed through my ears and struck directly inside my head. The arena disappeared. I stood in the ruined shelter where my mother had died. Dust covered the floor. My younger sister cried behind me. My mother sat against the broken wall with blood spreading across her clothes. She reached for my hand. Garrett, the illusion whispered. You are tired. Stay with me. For 1 second, every fight after that shelter felt pointless. Rift Decay, Kirk, the Python, the system, all of it faded behind the voice I had wanted to hear again for years. Then I remembered what my mother had actually said. Live! Protect your sister! My mother died to push me forward. Anything wearing her face and asking me to surrender had chosen the wrong memory. I grabbed the illusion's wrist. The shelter cracked. The false version of my mother shattered, and the arena slammed back into place. Morella was already in front of me. Her nails cut toward my throat. I leaned aside. Her fingertips still opened 4 lines across my coat, and the wound beneath them burned cold. Arena injuries followed me home, so every scratch mattered. Morella vanished into black mist and reappeared behind me. I used Bloodstep before her second strike landed, but she turned with the dash and released another breath for a scream. Her mouth opened for a second scream. I moved before the sound escaped. I caught her forearm and drove the blunt end of the paralysis cucumber between her teeth. Hadley stopped speaking. The entire arena stopped with her. Armor breaker flashed through the weapon. Morella's magical defense buckled. Her jaw locked, her limbs stiffened, and she hit the ground with a furious, muffled grunt. The system's dumbest weapon had just silenced a banshee. Beautiful! Morella tried to rise. I planted one boot beside her shoulder and aimed Crimson Grave at the floor around her. Blood-red spikes surrounded her body without piercing it. Surrender, I told her, or the next scream gets another serving. Morella looked at the cucumber, then at me. She slapped the floor twice. Hadley finally recovered. Floor 1 champion Morella Crawford has surrendered, she announced, to a vegetable. The crowd lost its mind. Floor 1 cleared. Abnormal status resistance acquired. Crimson Grave strengthened. Victor's bond unlocked. Defeated arena champions may be summoned as followers. Morella's body dissolved into red light and entered the new bond. The arena had just turned its champion into a fighter I could call outside. The portal opened beneath me. 1 moment later, I landed back in my bedroom in Nightvale Village with every bruise intact. Sylvie sat on the bed holding a new black coat. She had made it to replace the coat I gave Twyla. "My lord," Sylvie said, "I noticed your wardrobe had been donated to another woman." I looked at the coat. "You made a whole coat just to complain about Twyla." Sylvie held the coat against my shoulders. It fit perfectly. I ran my hand over the stitching. "This is incredible! I could wear something you made for the rest of my life." Sylvie went very still. Her affinity jumped. Later, she admitted she heard that sentence as a marriage proposal. I had meant the coat was durable. Same words. Extremely different levels of commitment. An alarm horn sounded outside. The bedroom door burst open, and an adult succubus shouted that orcs had entered the village square. So much for domestic peace. In Nightvale Village's central square, dozens of orc raiders had bound villagers, overturned food stores, and piled stolen treasure beside the well. A Tier 3 orc centurion stood over the captives with a broad axe. He saw me wearing Sylvie's new coat and laughed. "The summoned male came home," the centurion barked. "Kneel, and I may sell you with the women." Wrong village, wrong coat, terrible timing. I stepped into the square. Morella. Red light opened beside me. The banshee from the arena appeared in full form, took one look at the orcs, and smiled without warmth. The centurion's laughter stopped. Victor's bond had paid outside the arena exactly when I needed it. Morella released a controlled death wail. The front line of orcs dropped their weapons and clutched their heads. Sylvie crossed the square through the opening, turned 2 raiders to stone, and tore the ropes from the nearest captives. One raider raised a blade over an elderly villager. I pulled the orc backward with Crimson Grave before the strike fell. The villager grabbed the drop knife and cut the next prisoner free. The freed villager cut the next rope. Another captive grabbed a dropped knife. Within seconds, people who had been waiting to die were pulling each other free while Morella kept the raiders disoriented. I used Bloodstep to reach the centurion. His axe came down hard enough to split the well behind me. I dashed inside the swing, drove my shoulder into his chest, and wrapped Crimson Grave around both legs. The centurion pulled against the restraints and laughed again. The centurion bared his tusks. "You're still only one male." Morella's second wail hit his soldiers. Sylvie's magic swept another row off their feet. I looked around the square. Count again. The centurion ripped one leg free and swung the axe sideways. I ducked, caught the handle, and used his own momentum to turn him toward the captives he had threatened. They watched me break the axe across my knee. Then Crimson Grave drove through the centurion's armor and crushed the core beneath it. Their leader fell. The remaining raiders tried to run. Sylvie petrified the ones near the gate. Morella's wail dropped the rest before they reached the road. Within minutes, every captive was free and every raider was dead or stone. The village's collective affinity surged. The villagers had first treated me like a summoned lord. Now they watched me protect their food, homes, and people before taking a single reward. One elder bowed, the others followed. I made them stand and start repairing the square. Bowing could wait. The shelves were still broken. The daily quest still needed a new living woman. Once the village was secure, I took Morella into the woods beyond the wall. She was a living, magical beast. The dead graveyard wraiths had corrupted blood. Morella qualified. When I explained the rule, she tilted her head. "So your continued strength requires the blood of a new woman every dawn?" Morella asked. I nodded. Marilla pointed at the weapon. And you defeated me with a cucumber before asking? I spread my hands. I was busy surviving! Marilla exposed her neck with theatrical dignity. Then try not to be as inventive this time. I drank only enough to trigger the quest. Daily blood quest complete. Blood assimilation triggered. Marilla gripped the nearest tree and shuddered harder than Sylvie had. I released her at once. She took several breaths before looking at me. The paralysis weapon changed how my nerves respond. Everything's been painfully sensitive since the arena. I glanced at the weapon. The cucumber has consequences, Marilla glared. Never call it that while standing near me. Marilla warned me never to use that weapon near her again. Her blood also proved arena champions could satisfy the daily rule because they were living creatures, not dead spirits. That evening, inside my room, Sylvie tried a plan of her own. She later confessed that the village seduction coach had given her a lust crest. The crest was supposed to weaken my resistance and make her private visit impossible to misunderstand. Sylvie activated it inside my room. The arena resistance flashed around me. The magic bounced back into her. Sylvie grabbed the bedpost, cheeks burning, and immediately cursed the coach by role, family line, and probable intelligence. I broke the crest before I could control the scene. Then I waited until Sylvie's breathing steadied and her eyes cleared. Do you still want me here? Asked. Sylvie grabbed my collar. My answer didn't come from the crest. The bedroom door closed. By morning, Sylvie's new aura had already changed the room. Blood Fiend essence transferred. Garrett's attributes increased. Sylvie Morn advanced to Tier 4 lower. Sylvie's new aura shook dust from the ceiling. She looked at her hands, then at me. My lord, I feel stronger. I flexed my hands. In my defense, I also feel fantastic. The next daily quest appeared before breakfast and ruined the victory lap. The village had no unused adult women left. Marilla and Sylvie were already registered targets. Sylvie solved the problem by pointing toward the hills north of the village. The orc tribe that sent those raiders has adult women, Sylvie said. It's also got the warriors who've attacked Nightvale Village for years. 1. Enemy. 2. Resource problems. So before breakfast, Sylvie and I went to the orc settlement. At its northern gates, Sylvie spread her wings. She tested her Tier 4 power against the tribe that had treated her village like a supply shed. The orcs charged in formation. Their commander shouted that the succubus village had sent one woman to beg. Sylvie heard him, smiled, and raised one hand. Violet fire rolled through the front ranks, shattered the gate towers, and tore open the main street. Buildings collapsed as warriors rushed from every side. A second group tried to circle behind her. Sylvie snapped her wings once, vanished above the roofs, and dropped a wave of petrifying magic into their formation. Stone bodies blocked the street and trapped the fighters behind them. The commander tried to rally the survivors from a tower. Sylvie burned the tower out from under him and caught him with one hand before he hit the ground. Nightvale Village remembers every raid, she told him. Then she dropped him into his own charging line. Sylvie did not slow down. The system began feeding me experience from each of her kills. Sylvie's victories were leveling me from across the battlefield. The notifications became a stream. 20 kills. 50. 100. By the time the settlement stopped resisting, Sylvie had killed 178 hostile orcs. She captured 30 adult female orcs alive and forced the surviving guards away from them. I ordered her to keep the women unharmed because my daily rule needed living targets. I sampled one woman to complete that dawn's quest. The remaining 29 were petrified and secured as a 1-month reserve. Yes, I had become a vampire inventory manager. Survival had terrible branding. The tribe's stored treasure contained one system-compatible object, Aura Veil Pearl acquired. The Aura Veil Pearl could suppress my demonic aura outside active combat. It gave me the one thing I still lacked, a way to enter Ridgeway City without every evolved detector screaming. The shared experience also unlocked Night Predator, a passive boost to my speed and bleeding attacks after dark. Kirk preferred nighttime missions. That was almost considerate of him. I returned to Nightvale Village and gave Sylvie and Marilla direct orders. They would clear the nearby territory, protect the village, and preserve any new adult female beasts for the daily quest. Sylvie wanted to come with me. I refused because the village had already been attacked once. Marilla backed the decision, though she called my solo revenge plan dramatically unwise. I fastened the Aura Veil Pearl beneath Sylvie's coat. Then I checked that Blood Veil covered the remaining traces and faced the road to Ridgeway City. I had permanent skills, a summonable banshee, a stronger first follower, and concealed aura. One name waited at the end of the trip, Kirk Redmond. I thought returning to Ridgeway City would be the dangerous part. Then I learned the men who watched Kirk feed me to a monster still believed he made the right call. I reached Ridgeway City before noon with the Aura Veil Pearl hiding my Bloodfiend aura. The follower bond led me straight to Twyla Hargrove, my second follower, and Scarlet Bastion's ICE team leader. It also let me enter her apartment without using the front door. Twyla was asleep on the couch. My old coat was wrapped around her like a blanket. I stood there for 3 full seconds, enjoying the evidence. Then Twyla opened one eye. "Garrett," she warned. I leaned against the wall. "You sleep with every prisoner's coat, or am I getting special treatment?" An ice pillow launched at my face. I caught it before it broke my nose. Twyla sat up and pulled the coat tighter. The apartment was cold. Her affinity rose 1 point. Beautiful. Affinity still told the truth even when Twyla absolutely refused to. "I need Kirk Redmond's next mission," I told her. "Time, location, squad size, abilities." The teasing left her face. Twyla knew Kirk was the captain who fed me to the Titan Python. She also knew I had returned to Ridgeway for him. "I can get his schedule," she said, "but Apex Dominion is already asking questions about Callum." "That sounds like their family problem. It becomes our problem when his older brother asks them." Twyla dressed for work, still wearing my coat over her uniform. Before leaving, she pointed at the apartment door. "Stay hidden. Do not bite anybody. Do not break anything." I looked around her spotless apartment. "You really know how to make a guest feel trusted." Twyla opened the door. "You entered through my bedroom wall. Fair point." That afternoon, at Scarlet Bastion headquarters, the Donovan family reached her first. Twyla told me the encounter when she returned. The building records I read later filled in what happened after she left. Dashiell Donovan was Callum's older brother, a legendary Apex Dominion heir, and a man with a seriously unhealthy relationship with Symmetry. He sat across from Twyla with both cuffs aligned and both gloves folded beside him. 2 identical water glasses stood the same distance from his chair. One loose strand of Twyla's hair hung lower on the left. Dashiell stared at it long enough to look physically ill. "That was our first clue. The man was broken in a very specific direction." "Callum died inside our headquarters," Dashiell told her. "You were the last faction leader seen near him." Twyla kept her voice flat. "My men and I were petrified. When we recovered, Callum was gone." The fire enforcer standing behind Dashiell called her a liar and drove a flaming fist toward her face. Twyla caught the strike inside an ice shell. Dashiell raised one finger. The fire enforcer stopped. "My apologies," Dashiell said politely. "My subordinate dislikes incomplete stories." Twyla crushed the ice around the man's wrist until he dropped to one knee. "I dislike bad manners," she answered. Dashiell smiled, but his eyes stayed on that uneven strand of hair. Then he asked for the names and locations of Twyla's 2 subordinates. She gave him nothing useful and left. The security transcript later showed Dashiell waiting until the elevator closed. Then he told the fire enforcer, "Take both men alive. I want their stories side by side." Callum collected trophies. His older brother collected matching answers. Same family, different flavor of terrible. Twyla returned after dark carrying 2 cases and a folder thick enough to qualify as furniture. She dropped the stack on the table. "Kirk leads an 8-person steel squad. They enter the West Beast Zone at 10 tonight." The folder held the route, abilities, emergency signals, and enough personal data to apply for mortgages in their names. I lifted one page. "Did you bring me a mission file, or everybody's household registration?" Twyla folded her arms. "You asked for details. This includes his dental insurance." "You're welcome." One case held high-grade healing potions. The other held a reinforced combat jacket, blades, and gauntlets built for evolved hands. Twyla tightened the jacket strap and handed me the blade's hilt first. Then she snapped one gauntlet around my wrist and pointed at a steel practice plate. I hit it once. The plate folded around my fist. Her downstairs neighbor struck the ceiling with a broom. "That was a controlled test," Twyla said. I lowered my voice. "Then your plate lacked discipline." Her mouth twitched. She had spent her own money and risked her position to acquit me. I had no business being that moved 5 minutes before a murder mission. "You did all this for 60%? I asked. Twyla's eyes narrowed. 60 what? I pulled her close and kissed her before she could interrogate me. She froze for half a second. Then Twyla grabbed my collar and kissed me back hard enough to answer several questions she would later deny hearing. Follower affinity, 83%. When I released her, frost covered the table legs. Twyla touched her mouth. "That did not erase the bedroom wall issue. But it improved the meeting." She shoved the healing potions against my chest. "Bring those back empty or unopened. Do not waste them showing off." That instruction aged badly almost immediately. Before the revenge mission, I went to Ridgeway Central High. Autumn was still in class when I reached the school. I stayed across the street beneath Bloodvale, with the Aura Veil Pearl pressed against my chest. Through a second-floor window, I saw my younger sister at a desk with an open textbook. She wrote one line, erased it, and wrote it again. Tiredness showed when she rubbed her eyes. My sister was alive. I took one step toward the entrance. Then an evolved security scanner swept the front doors. The Aura Veil Pearl hid most of me. Active emotion already made my aura push against it. If I walked inside and one detector screamed, Apex Dominion would learn exactly who mattered to me. So I stayed hidden. My mother had told me to protect Autumn. Standing 20 yards away while she believed I was dead felt like failing that promise. Walking closer could have gotten her killed. I watched until the last class ended. Autumn packed her books slowly and paused beside the window. For 1 second, her face turned toward the exact place where I stood. Bloodveil kept me hidden, but I still stepped back. She adjusted her backpack and walked toward the stairs alone. I memorized the route, the security cameras, and the people near the exit. Protection was the only contact I could safely give her that night. Then I left before she could see me. At 10 that night, Kirk's 8-person squad entered the West Beast Zone. The moon was up, the trees were thick, Night Predator was active in every patch of darkness. I let them clear the first pack of low-tier beasts. Then I stepped out of Bloodveil and blocked the trail home. Kirk Redmond stopped first. The bargain bin captain looked older than he had beneath the python. He still looked ready to sacrifice somebody else. His squad raised weapons. Kirk stared at the scar his blade had failed to leave. "Garrett?" I smiled. "You remembered." The flat-topped mocker beside him laughed. "So the porter survived," he said. "Captain Kirk made the right call. 7 evolved, lived because 1 dying nobody got used properly." The Lightning Bruiser nodded. "You should be grateful. Without us, you would have died from rift decay in some apartment." Another squad member pointed at my coat. "Go home before the captain sacrifices you twice." That killed any last doubt. Kirk's squad still believed he was right. Every one of them had watched him cut me. While the python opened its mouth, the whole squad ran. Now they still believed my life had been the cheapest thing in the forest. Kirk raised one hand like he was settling a workplace complaint. "We can compensate you," he said. $200. Then you disappear." The flat-topped mocker pulled $200 bills from his pocket and tossed them toward my boots. "More than a porter's worth," he added. The bills had not touched the dirt when Crimson Grave cut across his neck. His body dropped beside the money. Nobody laughed after that. The Lightning Bruiser roared and released everything he had. A white bolt swallowed me from head to toe. Trees split behind me. The blast lit the entire trail. When the light cleared, smoke rolled off Twyla's combat jacket. My skin was intact. The bruiser's mouth stayed open. I brushed ash from my sleeve. "Was that the full attack?" he tried to answer. A blood-red spike punched through his chest and dropped him beside the first man. 2 men were down. 6 defenders remained. Kirk shouted for formation. I summoned Morella. Red light opened beside me, and the living banshee stepped onto the trail in black mist. Morella looked at the armed squad. "These are the men who abandoned you?" "Every one of them." Her death wail hit before Kirk could finish his order. 3 squad members collapsed, clutching their heads. I used Bloodstep to cross the line, broke 1 weapon, and drove Crimson Grave through the ground around their legs. The remaining 2 tried to flank Morella. One threw a chain around her arms. The other charged me with a broad blade, shouting that Kirk would promote whoever took my head. Morella let the chain tighten. Then her body broke into black mist, reformed behind the first man, and dropped him with 1 sharp note. I caught the broad blade between Twyla's new gauntlets, twisted it from the second man's hands, and kicked him into Crimson Grave. Their knees folded. I ended the squad quickly. They had earned hatred. Kirk had earned time. He backed away from 7 bodies and reached inside his jacket. The syringe in his hand held black market enhancement serum. Twyla's file had warned me about it. The drug could force a temporary rank jump while tearing the user apart from inside. Kirk stabbed it into his neck. Dark lines spread across his skin. His muscles swelled. The ground cracked beneath his boots. His threat rose to silver metal. For 3 seconds, the bargain bin captain believed he had purchased a comeback. Then he swung at me and hit empty air. I cut his shoulder from behind. Kirk spun. I opened his thigh from the other side. He turned again and found only darkness. That was when Night Predator finally introduced itself. After dark, my speed rose and every cut kept bleeding longer than it should. Kirk had chosen a night mission. Very considerate. He fired steel blades in every direction. 1 sliced my cheek. The rest hit trees. I appeared in front of him and broke his knee. Kirk dropped, then tried to crawl. "Kill me," he gasped. I pulled one of Twyla's high-grade potions from the case. Morella watched me pour it over his wounds. Broken flesh sealed, his breathing steadied. Even the damaged knee pulled back into place. Kirk looked hopeful for 1 stupid second. Then I broke the other knee. Morella looked at me carefully. "My lord, I serve you with complete loyalty." I hear a second sentence coming. "You are a sadist." I glanced at Kirk. "That sounds healthier than calling me merciful." Kirk begged again. I healed him again. Every 5 seconds he received another chance to understand what his 5-second sacrifice had bought him. I kept every wound non-fatal. His mind stayed clear. Then I made him look at every squad member who had defended the betrayal. Kirk offered money first, then equipment, then the names of people who had bought his squad services. I kept dragging him. He still thought somebody else should suffer for his choices. I pushed the last unopened potion back into Twyla's case. "You offered me $200, I told him. "Save your premium package." Then I caught him by the collar and started dragging him west. The Titan Python's lair was less than a mile away. Kirk understood the destination before we reached the slope. "No!" he whispered. The forest shook. The 100-meter Titan Python rose through the trees. It was the same armored head I had seen before. The summoning circle saved me. It looked at me first. Then it smelled Kirk's blood. I guessed my blood fiend aura made me seem less like prey. That was only a guess. The python never filed an explanation. Kirk clawed at the dirt. "You survived!" he shouted. "That means the decision worked. That was impressive." The man had reached the monster's mouth and still found one more bad argument. I lifted him by the back of his jacket. "You said one useless life could buy everyone else time." Kirk looked into the python's open jaws. "I threw him!" The Titan Python snapped forward and swallowed Kirk Redmond whole. Kirk received no speech, forgiveness, or appeal. That monster finished my revenge. Level 30 reached. Soul Forge permanently unlocked. Sylvie's Nightblood Greatsword became available through our follower bond without Blood Sovereign form. Morella watched the python settle back among the trees. "Kirk called you disposable," she said. I looked at the empty slope. He threw me away. I returned him to the same monster. Then the system screamed, "Danger warning. Target identified. Dashiell Donovan. Threat level, overwhelming." The leaked Blood Fiend aura had led him straight toward me. I had no Blood Sovereign charge left. I dismissed Morella and opened the Crimson Prison Arena before the warning reached its second pulse. The forest vanished beneath me. The arena preparation room locked around my body. I learned later that Dashiell arrived seconds after I disappeared. He followed the blood trail to the Titan Python. One horn curved farther than the other. The asymmetry offended him enough to attack the 100-meter beast. Honestly, I do not know what he thought symmetry would do for his survival. The arena locked its exit until I cleared another floor. The Crimson Prison Arena sealed behind me before Dashiell reached the Titan Python. I had used the arena as an emergency exit. The arena treated that as consent to another deathmatch. The preparation room displayed floor 2 and blocked every route home. One cleared fight. That was the price of hiding from a legendary hunter. The weapon wall offered respectable choices again. I ignored them again. The Whip of Tender Discipline hung beneath a warning label. Each successful strike increases the target's attack power. Repeated strikes stack. The wording said, target. It never said enemy. The system's cursed equipment department had finally hired a lawyer. For my one buff, I chose the option that summoned a follower into the arena. Red light opened beside me. Twyla Hargrove appeared in a burst of steam, one hand still holding a shower towel. The arena immediately replaced it with temporary black combat clothing and boots. Twyla looked down at herself. Then she looked at the whip in my hand. "Garrett," she said very slowly. "In my defense, I picked the follower buff before knowing your schedule. You entered my apartment, kissed me, disappeared, and now kidnapped me from my shower." I lifted the whip. The sequence sounds worse when you organize it. Ice spread across the preparation room. Hadley Thornton, the arena's floor host, boomed over the ring before Twyla could freeze me. "Floor 2 challengers, enter." The gate rose. Twyla walked through first and muttered, "I'm killing you after this." Her affinity rose. The affinity number told on her again. The floor 2 arena was a black stone basin surrounded by burning pillars. Hadley floated above the crowd and saw Twyla beside me. "The challenger has brought the woman whose uniform he ruined at the cemetery," Hadley announced. Twyla's frost reached the first row of seats. I pointed at Hadley. "That summary lacks context. The crowd has chosen its preferred context." The opposite gate exploded outward. Freya Dawes entered through a wall of fire. She was an adult flame witch and the floor 2 champion. She was beautiful enough to make an active furnace look inviting. Freya's red hair lifted in the heat. Flames curled around both arms. She looked at Twyla's ice, then at my whip. "Which one of you is the challenger?" Freya asked. I raised the whip. "Emotionally, both of us." Hadley dropped her hand. Freya attacked. A wave of fire crossed the arena before Twyla finished raising her guard. Twyla built a wall of ice. The first layer vanished. Cracks raced through the second. The third threw both of us backward. Freya walked through the steam without slowing. Twyla launched 6 ice spears. Freya burned 5 into water and caught the 6th between 2 flaming fingers. "Gold lower," Freya mocked. "You brought winter clothing to a volcano." Twyla's eyes narrowed. "Keep talking," Freya smiled. "I plan to." The 2 women had known each other for 30 seconds and already needed separate corners. I read the whip's rule again while Freya gathered another attack. Each successful strike increased the target's power. So, I turned toward Twyla. She saw the decision forming. I cracked the whip across the back of her arena armor. A 1 appeared on the whip's stat counter. Twyla's ice thickened. She looked at the notification she could not see, then at my face. Twyla demanded, "What did you just do?" Said, "Improved you." Twyla snapped, "Do it without enjoying the sentence." Freya sent a fire spear toward us. Twyla blocked it with one hand. That was proof enough. I struck again. The counter climbed to 2, then 5, then 12. The whip had almost no killing force. Its magic still left heat under the skin, and every strike made Twyla's ice stronger. Freya stopped laughing around stack 20. Hadley stopped commentating around stack 30. By stack 40, Frost had climbed every burning pillar. Twyla gritted her teeth and kept firing. How many? 41. You're counting? I told her. The system is counting. I'm surviving! Freya threw both hands upward. The ceiling of the arena filled with fire. Hadley finally found her voice. The champion is preparing her ultimate attack. Twyla looked at the burning sky, then over her shoulder. I did not make her ask twice. The counter climbed through 50. Freya pulled the entire fire ceiling into one descending mass. 60! The heat split the stone beneath our boots. 68! Twyla's breath turned white. I landed the last strike. The counter stopped at 69. Freya released the attack. A sun-bright wave dropped toward the ring. Twyla stepped in front of me and raised one hand. Her ice hit the fire in midair. The flames stopped. Frost raced backward through the burning wave, froze every pillar, and reached Freya before the Flame Witch could retreat. Freya's fire armor became clear ice around her body. Only her face remained exposed. Twyla walked across the frozen arena and tapped one finger against Freya's forehead. Surrender! Freya glared past her at me. He hit you 69 times. Twyla's cheeks flushed. Focus on your own defeat. Freya looked at the ice, locking her arms. I surrender. Freya kept her eyes on me. Next time, you fight me yourself. I lifted the whip. Careful, that sounded like a date. Twyla tapped the ice around Freya. Focus on losing first. The crowd erupted. Hadley lowered her microphone. Floor 2 has been cleared through aggressive teamwork and a very concerning reading of the rules. Victor's bond registered. Freya Dawes. Floor 2 cleared. The portal opened under us. Twyla and I returned to her apartment with every arena injury and every whip after effect intact. She made it 3 steps before grabbing the couch. The magic had faded from the weapon. Heat still burned beneath her skin. I caught her elbow. Twyla pointed at the bedroom. I blinked. That sounded dangerously close to an order. I lead an evolved team. You're also wearing my coat over arena clothes. Twyla looked down. The coat had returned with her through the follower bond. She pulled it closed. Massage, Garrett. I worked the tension from her shoulders while she complained about every stack individually. Around stack 20, her complaints became quieter. Around stack 40, she leaned back against me. At 69, she accidentally called me Master. The room went silent. Twyla covered her face with both hands. You heard nothing. Her affinity jumped again. I heard 69 complaints and 1 promotion. She turned and grabbed my shirt. Keep talking, and I'll demote you. The threat ended in a kiss. I checked her eyes and asked whether she wanted me to stop. Twyla answered by locking the bedroom door. Before dawn, the system filled my vision. Follower affinity, 100%. Unique follower reward received. Blood sovereign form charge increased by 1. There it was. A second one, use charge, earned through Twyla's completed bond before I needed it. Then Blood Fiend Essence moved through us. Twyla Hargrove advanced to Diamond. Her ice aura filled the apartment and turned every window white. Red-black light gathered above her heart. Permanent Soulforge answered it, and a dark silver crown formed in my hands. Exclusive equipment acquired, Knight's Sovereign Crown. Effect, improved magic output, mental speed, and command pressure. The crown registered inside Soulforge as permanent equipment. Twyla opened her eyes. Diamond pressure rolled through the apartment. She checked my face first, then her own hands. I placed the crown against my head. Twyla examined me. You look arrogant. I killed a captain, escaped his replacement, and won a fire match with a whip. You looked arrogant before that. Good. Diamond rank had not damaged her honesty. After sunrise, I asked Twyla for money because Autumn still needed a living allowance. I can't use my own identity yet, I told her. Twyla opened her banking app without making me explain twice. How much? Named the amount. She transferred more. I stared at the screen. You added a 0. I added food, rent, school costs, and the possibility that teenagers need things their brothers forget. I stopped arguing and accepted the transfer. I used Bloodveil on the evening school route and left the money where Autumn would find it without seeing me. I stayed outside the cameras and did not wait for her reaction. The daily quest was also still active. Near the Night College building, I found an adult attendee walking alone beneath the streetlights. Bloodveil hid my approach. I took one quick, non-lethal sample, completed the quest, and left before panic could spread. When I returned, Twyla's phone was flashing with missed alerts. Her 2 subordinates had vanished. The same men Sylvie petrified at the graveyard were now witnesses to Callum's death. Dashiell had ordered them taken because their stories could break Twyla's lie. Twyla's new diamond aura cracked the floor around her boots. Stay here, she told me. I looked at the frost climbing her walls. That sentence has never worked on me. This is my team. Twyla pulled on her uniform. They were taken because they followed me. She left before I could answer. What happened at the Apex Dominion warehouse came to me later through Twyla, her rescued men, and the security footage. Twyla entered alone through the loading bay. The fire enforcer from Dashiel's interrogation waited between her bound subordinates and the exit. He laughed when he saw her. Gold Lower came to negotiate, he said. Twyla removed her gloves. Update your information. The fire enforcer attacked first. Flames covered both arms and struck the floor hard enough to throw her men against their restraints. Twyla walked through the blast. Diamond ice sealed the flames against his own skin. The enforcer tried to retreat. Frost spread from his boots, climbed his body, and formed inside his chest before he reached the door. He dropped without another word. Follower kill experience received. Twyla cut her men free. One subordinate stared at the dead enforcer. Team leader, when did you become Diamond? Twyla pulled him upright. After you were abducted. Try to keep up. They almost reached the loading bay. Then every hanging chain in the warehouse straightened at once. Dashiel Donovan entered. He wore matching silver glasses and stopped when he saw one broken crate leaning against another. His expression tightened. The symmetry freak had arrived at a kidnapping warehouse and still found time to judge the furniture. Dashiel looked at the dead enforcer, then at Twyla's diamond aura. So, the vampire rewarded you, he said. Thank you for confirming the lie. Twyla launched 1,000 rotating ice blades across the warehouse. Dashiel raised one hand. Every blade stopped. Then the entire storm reversed. Twyla built 3 walls. Her own attack broke all 3 and drove her across the floor. She tried to stand. Dashiel removed his glasses and aligned them carefully inside his coat. When his eyes met hers, black pressure locked Twyla's body in place. Her men attacked from both sides. Dashiel knocked them away without looking. He stepped toward Twyla and raised one hand over her throat. At that moment, the experience from the fire enforcer reached me. Twyla had killed someone strong enough to matter inside Apex Dominion territory. That meant she had found her men. It also meant everyone hunting her now knew where she was. I called Sylvie through the follower bond. She arrived from Night Vale in a violet flash, took one look at my face and stopped teasing. We entered the warehouse through Twyla's bond signal. Dashiel's hand was descending when I spent the second Blood Sovereign charge. Crimson power exploded through the loading bay. I caught his wrist inches above Twyla's throat. His eyes widened. Then I tore off his arm. Dashiel jumped backward, staring at the missing side of his body. I stood between him and Twyla. The first charge came from Sylvie, I told him. This one came from the woman you abducted people to control. Twyla's body unlocked as his gaze broke. Her first movement was a smile. Dashiel screamed. 6 black wings burst from his back. 6 winged Reaper form detected. His missing arm regenerated beneath dark armor. A Reaper scythe formed in both hands. The system started another clock. Urgent mission, kill Dashiel Donovan within 5 minutes. Success reward available. Failure punishment applies. Dashiel looked at his restored arms and smiled again. Symmetry, he breathed. I genuinely do not know why he announced that like the universe had apologized. He swung the scythe. A black arc split the warehouse roof and struck me directly. Dashiel called it a god-slaying attack. My Blood Sovereign body took the hit and stayed standing. His smile vanished. I used Bloodstep, caught his right arm, and cut it away with the Nightblood Greatsword. Dashiel regenerated it, so I took the left one too. He stared at both empty shoulders. I tilted the sword. Symmetry restored. Sylvie laughed from beside Twyla. Dashiel spread all 6 wings and launched through the broken roof. The sky was his last advantage. He could fly, regenerate, and wait out my 10-minute form. The mission clock had already passed 3 minutes. I jumped after him. Blood Sovereign power carried me high enough to catch one ankle. Dashiel kicked free, climbed above the warehouse, and pulled the scythe back for another strike. He looked down and laughed. You cannot fight in my sky. I appeared behind him before the sentence finished. I caught the back of his neck and slapped him toward the ground. Dashiel crossed the warehouse roof, 2 storage floors, and the concrete beneath them. He tried to rise from the crater. I landed beside him and raised Nightblood Greatsword, Crimson Moon Wrath. The slash ended Dashiel Donovan before the 5-minute clock expired. Level 36 reached. Crimson Torrent unlocked, a forward Blood Blast. Special reward acquired, Blood Moon Token. The Blood Moon token could create 1 hour of artificial night and double the power of Blood Race allies inside it. The Blood Moon token was built for a much larger fight than Dashiel. My Blood Sovereign charge expired. Twyla reached me first. Her rescued subordinates stayed behind her, looking at the dead legendary heir and reconsidering every rumor they had heard about me. I told Twyla to leave Ridgeway with me. She refused. If I disappear, Scarlet Bastion becomes your enemy, Twyla said. If I stay, I can watch the factions, protect my team, and warn you before they move. You nearly died doing that. Twyla stepped closer. Then keep your promise and protect me. I touched my forehead to hers. I will. I held her hand for 1 second, then let her return to the position she had chosen. The Apex Dominion records I read later showed what happened that same night. Ambrose Donovan, the dying CEO and father of Callum and Dashiell, left his private sanatorium after sensing both family bonds go silent. He reached headquarters, saw 2 dead sons, and stopped asking for a killer. Ambrose wanted the whole city pointed at me. Dashiell's death brought his father into the fight. Soon afterward, Ambrose Donovan summoned Ridgeway City's major evolved leaders. Twyla's report and federal records gave me the ugly version later. Ambrose was the dying CEO of Apex Dominion. He had buried 2 sons in days and wanted the whole city to pay for it. Ariella Crosby chaired the room. She was the supreme tier head of the Federal Evolved Association's Ridgeway branch, which made her the one person Ambrose could not order. Ambrose demanded a citywide hunt for the blood fiend who killed his sons. Ariella asked, "What did Garrett attack besides Apex Dominion?" Ambrose glared. The third faction chair tapped the table. Callum tried to capture him. Dashiell abducted Scarlet Bastion personnel. Garrett has not attacked this city. Cormac Sullivan, the city's rigid Justice Guild leader, kept both hands on the table. "I won't march my people into an unknown nest for one family's revenge." Shelby Langley led an all-women combat guild. She leaned back. "I don't volunteer women for rich men's family funerals." That nearly killed the meeting. Ariella imposed a 30-day delay for verified intelligence and supreme backup. Ambrose slammed both hands down. He called every refusal cowardice, then warned that the blood fiend would come for their families next. Cormac started to rise. Ariella's summoned pressure pinned every loose page flat and stopped the water trembling inside the glasses. "You do not spend this city to bury your sons," Ariella told him. Ambrose gave the order again. The third faction chair looked away. Shelby did not. Cormac slowly lowered his hand. Nobody moved. The grieving tyrant had entered expecting an army. He left with his own people and a room full of witnesses to the refusal. At the time, I only knew the factions had not moved yet, so I used the delay to strengthen my followers before Ambrose found another route. That night, I summoned Morella Crawford to an old lake outside Ridgeway. Morella was my living banshee follower from Arena Floor 1. Her affinity sat close to 100, but compliments had stopped moving it. She arrived in black mist and studied the moonlit water. "This place feels lonely," Morella said. It was useful for that. We followed a narrow trail through tall reeds. The first stalk brushed Morella's arm. She flinched hard enough to step into me. Her body was still hypersensitive from the paralysis cucumber. I caught her around the waist. Morella looked up. "You chose a reed field while knowing my condition. In my defense, the lake existed before the cucumber." A second reed touched her shoulder. Her affinity rose. The system had the emotional subtlety of a live scoreboard. I carried Morella through the thickest patch before the plants turned the walk into a medical incident. She looped both arms around my neck. "This is undignified," she whispered. "You surrendered to produce in front of an arena crowd." Morella rested her chin on my shoulder. "You always ruin the romantic part." Her affinity rose again. At the water, I set her down on the old wooden platform where I used to sit after work. Morella asked why I had come there before becoming a blood fiend. I told her the truth. When the doctors confirmed rift decay would kill me, I came to that lake whenever Autumn was asleep. My sister never needed to watch me panic about leaving her alone. I sat by the water, counted what little money I had, and planned one more week at a time. Morella took my hand. "You were preparing to die," she said. "I was preparing to keep her safe after I did." Morella moved closer until our shoulders touched. "Then, let me help you stay alive instead. Follower affinity, 100%. Crimson light covered the lake. The water pulled away from the shore as a massive black-red fortress rose above it. Towers unfolded from the glow. Bridges locked into place. A central keep floated over the water with enough room to shelter an entire village. Unique follower reward acquired, Crimson Keep. Crimson Keep restores injuries and stabilizes registered residents inside its walls. A second light gathered over Morella's heart. Permanent Soul Forge formed a dark pendant in my palm. Exclusive equipment acquired, Morella's Wraith Pendant. Effects, increased spirit, control resistance, and limited magic nullification. Morella stared at the pendant. "Soulforge pulled that from me," she said. "Does that make it our spiritual child?" I fastened it around my neck. "Please do not make the necklace responsible for family paperwork." Morella considered that. "I'm spiritually married." The Doom Prophet had become a soulmate with administrative objections. Inside Crimson Keep, Morella declared that our hearts and souls had already chosen each other. Then she kissed me. I checked that the choice was hers. Morella told me to stop asking obvious questions. Crimson Keep's doors closed behind us. By morning, Blood Fiend Essence had completed the reward. Morella Crawford advanced to Tier 5 Middle. Her Banshee aura deepened until the windows hummed. Crimson Keep gave me a base and a healer. I still lacked enough immediate force to stop a city, so I entered the arena again. Floor 3 opened beneath a red sky. Hadley Thornton, the arena's floor host, floated above the ring and looked at the wraith pendant. "New jewelry," Hadley announced. "The challenger is finally dressing like somebody with survival instincts." The opposite gate opened. Sabine Whitfield charged into the arena. The adult centaur champion carried a long lance and a heavy shield. She looked furious before the match even started. Sabine slammed the shield down. "Attack me," she ordered. Magic hit my mind and forced my body forward. Her taunt required me to strike. The shield absorbed every hit, stored the force, and fed that power into her lance. I punched once. The shield glowed. Sabine's lance grew brighter. "Harder," she demanded. Hadley made a noise above us and wisely chose silence. The taunt chose my target. I still controlled the force, so I tapped the shield with 2 fingers. The glow barely changed. Sabine's expression tightened. I tapped it again. "You insult me," Sabine snapped. "I'm managing your expectations." She taunted me harder. I answered with the weakest legal strikes my body could produce. Her shield stored almost nothing. Her lance stayed undercharged. Pride did the rest. Sabine threw the shield aside and charged with both hands on the lance. I used Bloodstep at the last second. Her weapon crossed empty space. Crimson Grave burst around all 4 legs and locked them to the stone. Sabine ripped through the first restraints. I jumped onto her back, hooked one arm around her neck, and tightened the choke until her movements weakened. She bucked hard enough to crack the arena floor. I held on. Sabine lost consciousness before the restraints broke. When she woke inside the result circle, she looked at the discarded shield, then at me still sitting on her back. "Move," Sabine growled. I stepped down. "You asked for harder." I changed tactics. Sabine kept glaring even as the result circle registered her. Floor 3 cleared. Victor's bond registered. Sabine Whitfield. Hadley looked down at the unconscious centaur. The champion demanded harder hits, discarded her shield, and got ridden into defeat. I pointed upward. "Your summaries remain hostile. They remain accurate." I continued to floor 4 before my injuries could convince me to become sensible. The next arena looked empty. Then the floor split into tentacles. Briar Montrose rose from the center. The adult mimic champion had a human-shaped upper body above a mass of tentacles. She smiled at the wraith pendant. "Pretty. Wonder whether it survives poison." Tentacles wrapped both my arms before I could draw a Nightblood greatsword. Barbs pressed through my coat. Poison spread across my ribs and slowed my hands. Briar pulled me closer. "Surrender, and I may keep you comfortable." The daily blood quest flashed in my vision. Briar was a new living adult woman. One of her tentacles crossed near my mouth. I bit it. Briar's smile broke. Daily blood quest complete. Blood assimilation triggered. "Did you just bite me?" Briar demanded. "I had a deadline." Her grip tightened. I activated Blood Veil. My aura and sound vanished inside her coils. Briar's tentacles squeezed the place where she thought I still stood. I slipped beneath them, drew Nightblood greatsword, and cut myself free. Crimson Grave pinned 3 tentacles to the floor. Blood spikes forced the rest away from my throat. Briar opened a third eye across her forehead. Black light struck my face. The wraith pendant turned cold. Morella's reward blocked the control effect and broke the magic before it reached my mind. Briar stared at the pendant. I smiled. "Your poison slowed me." The eye did nothing. I used Bloodstep, reached her center, and wrapped Crimson Grave around her body before the tentacles recovered. Briar struggled once, then she raised both hands. "I surrender, mostly because I want to know why biting me worked. Get in line." Floor 4 cleared. Victor's bond registered. Briar Montrose. Poison resistance acquired. Briar bind unlocked. A tentacle restraint skill. Hadley opened the exit and gave me one final warning. Floor 5 is a boss floor. Isadora Grieve, the Gorgon Queen, is waiting. Floor 5 could wait. My body could not. Back at Nightvale Village, Crimson Keep reduced the worst damage, but the arena wounds still followed me home. Sylvie treated the remaining poison burns, whip cuts, and bruises herself. She tied the last bandage harder than necessary. "You keep entering places that return you damaged," Sylvie said. "I also keep returning. One day that answer will stop being cute." I caught her hand. "Then I need enough power before that day arrives." Sylvie stayed angry and finished every bandage. While I recovered, Ambrose chose murder after the meeting refused him. Records I read much later showed the bargain. Ambrose promised his inheritance to Dr. Odette Radcliffe, his diamond upper private doctor, if she helped avenge both sons. Odette had examined Callum's recovered body so she could copy the blood fiend residue. At one guild checkpoint, she killed the guards and spread the copied aura across the scene. The alarm caught one blood-colored blur before every signal died. Families reached the gate before the bodies were covered. Cormac saw his own people carried out under my signature and demanded blood before anyone could challenge the aura match. Odette struck a second checkpoint the same way. This time, the casualty list included women from Shelby's guild. She stopped laughing about Ambrose's family war and started preparing fighters. The third faction chair noticed the mismatch. My known targets had attacked me or my people. These guards had never met me, and none had been drained. The frame gave Ambrose the anger his authority had failed to win. Ridgway split between rage and suspicion. Then Dorothea Hargrove went to Twyla's apartment. She was Twyla's estranged mother and the head of Scarlet Bastion. Years of distance ended when her daughter became the link between two dead Donovan heirs and a hunted blood fiend. Twyla told me later how the visit went. Dorothea entered without an embrace. "You lied to Scarlet Bastion for him," she said. Twyla blocked the doorway. "You disappear from my life and return to search it. I returned because a city may attack my daughter. You returned because my secrets became useful." Dorothea asked whether I still thought like a human. Twyla refused to answer for me, so Dorothea used her memory reading gift. She touched Twyla's forehead before Twyla could pull away. The memory showed the bargain bin captain cutting me and the younger Donovan heir, treating us as property. Dorothea also saw my coat around Twyla's shoulders, my sister at school, and every choice Twyla made after the graveyard. It also showed enough private moments to make Dorothea release her daughter with a perfectly controlled expression. Twyla slapped her hand away. "You could have asked. You would have lied," Dorothea answered. "I would have chosen what belonged to me." Twyla stayed furious even after Dorothea found a useful answer. Dorothea looked at my coat around Twyla's shoulders. "He's Garrett Durham, the Porter Kirk left for dead." She faced the door. "He still protects his sister, his followers, and the people who took him in." "Scarlet Bastion will not join the hunt," Dorothea said. "We protect him until the association hears the truth." Twyla did not thank her. Dorothea had chosen my side and heard her daughter in the same minute. Dorothea kept that decision from me for the moment. I only knew strangers had been murdered beneath my aura signature. The angry guilds were turning toward me while my newest followers were still learning to fight together. I thought the next fight would happen in Ridgway. Ambrose had a more cowardly idea. He decided to bring the whole city to my home. Ambrose had redirected Ridgway's angry guilds toward Nightvale Village. So the next morning, I stopped waiting for the hunt to reach my front door. I took Sylvie and 3 arena followers into a spider cave outside Ridgway City. Freya brought fire. Sabine was my centaur tank. Briar brought poison and enough tentacles to ruin any normal formation. The cave held enough monsters to level a full team, and I needed one before Ambrose brought an army home. The entrance dropped into total darkness. I looked at Freya Dawes, my adult flame witch follower from Arena Floor 2. I pointed into the dark. "Like the tunnel." Freya's hair ignited around her shoulders. "I am a flame witch. Armies burn when I move." I nodded down the tunnel. "Great. Burn the darkness first." Briar covered a laugh with one hand. Sabine laughed openly. Freya formed a fireball above her palm, then let it shrink until the tunnel went black again. "Twyla defeated me," Freya snapped. "You stood behind her holding that ridiculous whip. Victor's bond may drag me here, but you've never beaten me yourself." There it was. The living lamp had filed a workplace grievance. Freya launched the fireball at my chest. I crossed both arms and took the blast. My coat burned at the edges, but Crimson Keep had restored my arena wounds and my new resistance held. Freya followed with a second flame spear. I used Bloodstep, appeared beside her, and activated Briar Bind. Red-black tentacles burst from the cave floor. They wrapped Freya's wrists, waist, and ankles before she could turn. She burned through the first layer. I added Crimson Grave beneath her feet and pinned the remaining restraints to the stone. Freya pulled until the walls cracked. "Cheap trick. You asked me to fight you myself." "I did." Tightened the restraints enough to stop her flames from forming. "Say the oath because you choose to follow me," I told her, "or keep acting like Twyla owns your defeat." That hit harder than the tentacles. Freya glared for several breaths, then she repeated the eternal loyalty oath and called me her commander. Freya Dawes acknowledged direct command. Her affinity jumped. I released her. Freya straightened her scorched sleeves. "You're still using me as a lamp." I pointed deeper into the cave. "A respected tactical lamp." Briar moved close enough for one tentacle to curl around my arm. "Can I be the blanket?" I looked at the tentacle. Blankets usually wait for permission. Briar smiled. "I just asked." Sylvie peeled it away. "You can be several feet farther from my lord." Briar smiled wider. "That sounds like fear of competition." Sylvie's wings opened. Sabine lowered her lance between them. "Save the mating dispute for after the killing." The centaur had been inside the cave 10 minutes and already wanted hazard pay. Freya raised a proper flame above the group, and we moved. The first tunnel ended at a wide chamber covered in old webbing. Broken armor and animal bones filled the corners. Thousands of small claw marks crossed the floor towards several side passages. Something had been feeding there for years. Sabine studied the tunnels. "The young hide beyond the walls. I can call them." Her taunt had forced me to attack in the arena. Here, it could pull every nearby spider into one place. I spread the team around the chamber. Sylvie took the high ledge. Freya held the rear with her flames. Briar sank half her tentacles into the floor. I kept the center clear. Sabine slammed her lance against her shield. Her taunt rolled through the cave. The walls started moving, spiders poured from every tunnel, crawled across the ceiling, and pushed through cracks beneath our feet. The first wave filled the chamber, and thousands followed. Sabine planted her shield and grinned. They answer properly. Try not to sound proud of the nightmare, I told her. The swarm hit. The first wave climbed over Sabine's shield and tried to bury her under sheer weight. She lowered her shoulders, drove all 4 hooves into the floor, and held the tunnel mouth while shells scraped across her armor. Briar threaded tentacles between Sabine's legs and yanked the smaller spiders away before they reached her unprotected underside. Don't touch there, Sabine barked. Briar flung several spiders into the wall. Then stop storing enemies there. Sabine's ears flattened. Their teamwork already needed supervision. It still worked. Sylvie's petrifying wave turned the front ranks into stone. The spiders behind them climbed over the bodies and kept coming. Freya swept fire across the ceiling. Burning spiders dropped into Briar's waiting tentacles. Briar spun once and hurled them back into the packed tunnels. Then Sylvie, Freya, and Briar attacked together. Violet magic hardened shells. Fire cracked them. Poison tentacles ripped through everything that survived. The system started pouring follower experience into me. Levels moved. Skills strengthened. The chamber filled with dead spiders faster than new ones could enter. One giant spider leaped over Sabine's shield. I raised my hand. A red-black hand larger than my body formed above the floor and closed around the creature in mid-air. Fiend's Grasp permanently unlocked. The new skill let me seize and bind a target beyond my physical reach. I crushed the spider, then used the same hand to sweep a second group into Freya's flames. The tunnels went quiet. Thousands of spiders lay across the chamber. My team had erased the whole swarm without losing formation. Freya looked at the smoking floor. Still think I am a lamp? I nodded at the bodies. An aggressively promoted lamp. Her mouth twitched before she hit it. The experience stopped. That was the problem. A nest this large needed a queen. We had killed everything except the creature big enough to build it. I looked up. The ceiling opened. A Tier 6 spider queen dropped through the webbing and spat a sheet of green acid before anyone moved. Sabine raised her shield. The acid struck, spread around the edge, and burned through the straps. A second stream hit the ledge beneath Sylvie. She jumped, but webbing snapped around both wings and slammed her against the wall. More webbing wrapped Sabine's legs and dragged the centaur sideways. The queen ignored Freya's larger flames and Briar's tentacles. Its eyes locked on Sylvie. Sylvie carried the weakest aura in the chamber. The queen had chosen the first follower as the easy meal. It lunged across the wall with one claw raised. I used Bloodstep and crossed the acid between us. The poison in the liquid burned my boots and skin, but the resistance I earned from Briar kept my legs moving. I reached Sylvie before the claw did. Nightblood greatsword formed in my hand. I cut upward. The queen's front claw spun across the chamber and buried itself beside Freya. Black acid splashed over my shoulder. Sylvie tore one arm free and caught me before I fell. Sylvie gripped my coat. My lord, that was reckless, I told her. The spider tried to eat you. Sylvie looked at the missing claw. Then I approve. Affinity flashed above her panel. The queen screamed and dropped from the wall. I summoned Morella. Red light opened near the center. My living banshee follower appeared, saw the creature charging us, and released a death wail before asking for context. The sound hit every eye on the queen's head. Its charge broke. Briar's tentacles wrapped the remaining front claw and pulled in opposite directions. Sabine! I shouted. The centaur ripped one leg from the web and activated her taunt. The queen turned from Sylvie and attacked the louder target. Sabine caught the strike on her damaged shield. The impact drove her across the chamber, but it bought Freya enough time to burn Sylvie free. I pushed through the acid again and closed Fiend's grasp around the queen's jaws. The giant hand held its mouth shut. Briar added her own restraints around several legs. Morella screamed again. Freya filled the gaps with fire. Sylvie's petrification crawled over the queen's wounded joint. The creature tore free of 3 tentacles and lifted Sabine from the ground. Freya struck its exposed belly with a concentrated flame lance. The queen folded around the hit, then sprayed acid through the fire. Burning poison filled the chamber and forced Freya backward. Briar tried to pull the queen's rear legs together. Its shell cut through Briar's tentacles. They regenerated, but the delay nearly cost Sabine her neck. Morella shifted her wail into a shorter pulse. The queen's grip loosened for one heartbeat. That was enough. Sabine drove her lance through the web above her, dropped free, and landed beside me. Sabine lowered her lance. Again! The proud centaur had stopped arguing with the plan. Good. We finally had a commander problem instead of 6 solo fighters. I drove Crimson Grave through the floor. Blood-red spikes locked every leg that remained. Then Fiend's grasp forced the queen's head down while the full team attacked the same opening. Its shell split. Crimson Grave tore through the weakened center and ripped the Spider Queen apart. The Tier 6 aura vanished. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Sabine dropped from the web and landed on all 4 feet. Freya extinguished the cave ceiling. Briar released the restraints. Sylvie kept one hand on my burned shoulder. Level 42 reached. Kane's Wrath unlocked. High output blood attack. The Spider Queen had treated Sylvie like the weak link. Now its body was spread beneath the boots of the woman it tried to eat. That was a team win. I allowed myself exactly one proud thought before the acid injuries started hurting properly. Briar examined the burns across all of us. My body regenerates, she said. Pieces of my tentacles carry the same healing. She cut several clean strips from one tentacle. The missing flesh regrew before it hit the ground. I stared at the offered piece. This story keeps finding new ways to make dinner threatening. Briar ate one first. Her burn closed. That was enough proof. We shared the regenerated flesh. Heat spread through my wounds, pushed out the acid, and sealed the damaged skin. Then the second effect arrived. Briar's healing tissue also transferred her current emotional state. Briar was feeling extremely affectionate, very pleased with herself, and completely uninterested in personal space. Freya sat closer to me. Sylvie moved closer than Freya. Marilla rested her head on my shoulder and informed everyone that our souls already had assigned seating. I glanced at her. Did our souls reserve this spot? Marilla closed her eyes. They have excellent taste. Sabine looked around the crowded healing circle. This is undisciplined. Briar curled one tentacle around my waist. You're the only one sitting far away. Sabine's jaw tightened. The healing became a competition almost immediately. New personal record for group instability. Freya and Briar had both risked themselves in the queen fight. Both had also chosen the follower oath freely. When they asked for the same recognition Sylvie, Twyla, and Marilla had received, I checked their answers and gave it. The cave finally quieted. Then the system displayed every result. Freya Dawes, follower affinity, 100%. Briar Montrose, follower affinity, 100%. Both followers have broken their former class limits. Freya's flames compressed into a white-red burn that softened stone without touching anyone beside her. Briar's tentacles regenerated beneath a dark venom sheen. She wrapped one around my chair. Sylvie removed it. Briar replaced it. The first unique reward was a small red puppet shaped like me. Blood substitute doll acquired. Function, replaces Garrett once at the instant of a fatal hit. One use. The second formed as a black execution frame wrapped in chains. Mournful moon gallows acquired. Function, once locked on one target, raw strength cannot break the execution. One use. I held one life and one death in my hands. Both would vanish after one use. Sabine stared at them, then at her own empty hands. She had tanked the queen's strongest strikes and helped save Sylvie while two newer bonds reached 100. Sabine turned away. I will train. Her voice stayed controlled. One hoof cracked the stone beneath her. Soulforge answered after she turned away. Freya's inferno mantle formed across my shoulders while Briar's venom earring appeared in my palm. One scaled with her fire, the other carried Briar's poison and strengthened my resistance. Freya settled the inferno mantle across my shoulders. Briar touched the venom earring and smiled at Sylvie. Sabine kept walking. Her cracked hoofprint said enough. The resentment waited for its turn. The Spider Queen rewards gave me tools. Flight remained missing. If Ambrose brought an army to a mountain village, I could not afford to leave the sky uncontested. The petrified adult orc reserve covered the daily quest during the time skip. So over the next few days, I drove the team through one beast nest after another. Each raid ended with another coordinated kill and another flood of follower experience. Freya stopped questioning combat orders. Sabine hit harder. Briar learned when to bind instead of flirt. Sylvie kept the whole formation from turning into a dating dispute with weapons. During the final raid, another threshold opened across my back. Pain split across both shoulder blades. I dropped one knee, felt bone and blood energy reshape behind me, and heard Freya laugh before the change finished. Freya watched the wings form. Your first landing will be ugly. I looked at her. Supportive. Freya folded her arms. I've watched you use stairs. Blood-red wings burst from my shoulders and lifted me above the trees. Blood wings unlocked. Blood wings finally let me fight in the sky without spending blood sovereign form. The doll, the gallows, the blood moon token, my follower team, and my wings were ready. I unlocked them one raid too late. At Nightvale Village, the first meteors were already falling. While I unlocked blood wings above the last beast nest, Ambrose Donovan reached Nightvale Village with an army. I learned the first minutes later from Twyla and the villagers who survived them. Ambrose had ignored the Federal Evolved Association's ban. He gathered the guilds enraged by the copied Blood Fiend aura and marched them straight to my home. His first order was extermination. Fire streaked across the morning sky. The first meteors crushed several homes, split the village road, and threw burning timber through the square. Succubi ran from collapsing roofs while evolved attackers tore through the outer wall. Food stores burned. The old summoning chamber cracked beneath the second impact. From the way Ambrose staged it, the attack was bait. He wanted me to return angry and careless. He used civilians because his two sons had already proved the family preferred hostages to direct hunting. Twyla reached Nightvale before I did. My Diamond Ice follower had tracked the coalition from Ridgeway through Scarlet Bastion intelligence. The follower bond gave her the final direction. She landed in the village square while another fire attack was falling. Twyla raised both hands. Ice flowers opened across the sky and swallowed the flames. Their petals folded, froze the burning debris, and dropped it harmlessly outside the homes that remained. An Apex Dominion fighter charged her from behind. A second ice flower bloomed through his armor and locked him upright. Twyla crossed the square, froze 2 more attackers, and pulled a trapped succubus from beneath a broken wall. A burning roof beam fell toward several villagers near the well. Twyla caught it inside a block of ice and shoved it aside. When the next shockwave hit, she covered them with her own body. One village guard had already raised a spear at her human uniform. He lowered it after that. Then he turned and used the same spear against Ambrose's attackers. The villagers had first met her as the human woman trying to capture me. Now she stood between them and the city. A Night Vale guard demanded her name. Twyla planted an ice blade in the ground. "I'm Twyla Hargrove, Garrett's follower. Anyone who wants his people goes through me first." The guard opened the inner gate. 2 more guards moved behind Twyla's ice wall. Night Vale had accepted the woman who once tried to capture me. She extinguished the nearest houses, built ice barriers around the wounded, and drove the attackers back toward Ambrose's coalition. Then Twyla faced the assembled guilds. "You were told Garrett murdered your people," Twyla shouted. "His attacks targeted Apex Dominion. These victims were never drained, and they died exactly where Ambrose needed evidence. The Federal Evolved Association is already coming. Decide what you want them to find." Several guild fighters looked toward their leaders. The copied aura had created rage. The mismatched victims created doubt. Cormac Sullivan, the rigid head of Civic Valor Guild, kept his weapon raised. His guards were still dead. Shelby Langley, leader of the Iron Sirens, stopped her women from charging while she looked at the burning village. Ambrose saw the hesitation and made the only decision his family understood. He doubled down. Dr. Odette Radcliffe stood beside him in a diamond combat coat. I knew her then only as his private doctor. She pointed at Twyla and called the accusation blood fiend manipulation. "Kill the traitor before the association arrives," Odette ordered. Ambrose pointed at Twyla. "Do it now." Ambrose raised both arms. Clouds twisted above Night Vale. A meteor wider than the village formed inside the fire. The coalition finally understood the scale of his plan. He was willing to erase his own allies along with my people. Twyla built an ice dome over the village. Cracks spread across it before the meteor even fell. She held anyway. That stand bought me the last few seconds I needed. Bloodwings carried me over the mountain ridge. Below me, Night Vale burned beneath the giant meteor. Twyla stood alone at the center of the failing dome. Ambrose watched from outside the blast zone. Cain's wrath gathered through my arms. I folded both Bloodwings and dropped onto the meteor's center. The impact stopped it for 1 heartbeat. Then Cain's wrath exploded through the rock. Blood-red force split the meteor from the inside. Burning pieces broke around the village and crashed into empty slopes beyond the walls. The shockwave threw coalition fighters off their feet. I landed in front of Twyla while fragments burned behind us. Her ice dome collapsed into glittering dust. Twyla looked at my wings. "You took your time!" I opened them wider. "I was growing transportation." She touched one cracked piece of armor near her ribs. "Next time, grow faster!" Her voice stayed sharp. Her hand stayed against my chest 1 second longer than necessary. Then Ambrose walked through the smoke. The grieving tyrant walked through the smoke, gray-haired and shaking from illness. Flames rolled from his shoulders and melted the stone beneath each step. My voice carried across the coalition. "I killed Callum Donovan after he tried to collect Sylvie and me as trophies." My finger settled on Ambrose. "I killed Dashiell Donovan after he abducted Twyla's men and tried to murder her." Ambrose's fire surged. "I killed both sons," I finished. "Fight me away from the village. Keep hiding behind civilians, and everybody here learns exactly what the Donovan name is worth." His army heard it. So did the villagers. Ambrose attacked before anyone could answer for him. He launched himself at me. We collided above the ruined road. His first punch broke through my guard and drove me across the square. I spread Bloodwings before hitting the homes and redirected into the sky. Ambrose followed on a pillar of fire. I drew Nightblood Greatsword and cut across his chest. The blade opened his coat. Fire sealed the wound before blood reached the air. Ambrose grabbed one wing and threw me into the mountain outside Night Vale. Stone collapsed over my body. I blasted free with Crimson Torrent. He crossed the distance before the blood wave faded and drove a burning hand through my chest. The blast knocked every sound out of my head. My body fell from the mountain. Sylvie screamed my name from the village. Twyla's ice stopped moving. Ambrose watched me hit the ground and lifted both hands toward Night Vale again. "Your lord is dead," he announced. "Finish the village." A small red puppet shattered inside my coat. I opened my eyes. The blood substitute doll had replaced me at the instant the strike became fatal. Its one life was gone, mine remained. I rose from the crater behind Ambrose, his face lost every trace of victory. Bad news, I told him, you killed the merchandise. The system opened a clock over his head. Urgent mission, kill Ambrose Donovan within 5 minutes. Failure punishment applies. Ambrose's coalition charged when they saw me stand. My followers intercepted them before they reached the village. Sylvie led Nightvale's defenders through the broken gate. Her petrification stopped the front line, while my arena followers hit both flanks. Freya's fire tore through incoming projectiles. Morella's death wail broke one charging formation. Sabine smashed the fighters who survived the sound. Briar bound anyone who tried to circle toward the wounded. The guild still had numbers. I had one battlefield answer left for numbers that large. I crushed the Blood Moon token. The morning sky turned dark red. A miniature blood moon appeared above Nightvale and created 1 hour of artificial night. Night Predator activated across my body. Sylvie and every succubus in the village received the same blood ray surge. The balance shifted at once. A fighter who had overpowered 2 village guards lost his weapon to Sylvie's first strike. Freya's flames pushed an entire ranged unit off the ridge. Twyla froze a path through the center and pulled wounded villagers behind cover. Briar's tentacles caught a squad trying to flank the healing line. She stacked them against a wall like confiscated luggage and warned them she charged extra for repeat customers. Freya laughed hard enough to burn another projectile out of the sky. Morella's next wail broke a caster formation before their spell finished. The sound shook loose, a damaged tower. Sabine charged underneath it and held the falling stone on her shield until the villagers cleared. Under the blood moon, every follower covered the opening created by the last one. Sabine caught Shelby's charging women on her shield. Shelby saw the centaur hold the line and laughed instead of retreating. At least his women can fight, Shelby shouted. Sabine lowered her lance. You may test that conclusion once. On the other side, Cormac drove straight toward me while demanding justice for his checkpoint guards. Morella's wail forced him back, but he kept standing. His people were dead. Even after the lie cracked, grief kept him fighting. Ambrose had to die first. The 5-minute clock kept falling. The blood moon doubled my nighttime speed. I reached Ambrose and cut him across the shoulder before he finished turning. He answered with a firestorm that peeled half the mountain away. I flew through it, used Fiend's Grasp to lock one arm, and drove Nightblood Greatsword toward his throat. Ambrose tore free before the blade landed. He looked at the blood moon, the broken coalition, and the village fighters pushing back. Then he removed a metal case from inside his coat. The case was packed with black market serum injectors. One dose had nearly killed Kirk while forcing him into silver rank. Ambrose used every dose. The syringes emptied into his neck and arms. His dying body changed immediately. Gray hair darkened, wrinkles vanished, his spine straightened. Within seconds, Ambrose wore the 18-year-old body he had before illness and fatherhood. The power kept rising. He moved before Night Predator registered him. One punch folded my blood wings and drove me through the mountain. A second strike broke Nightblood Greatsword from my hand. Ambrose caught my throat and dragged me across the ridge. Every step split the ground. The mountain began sliding toward Nightvale in sheets of rock. The serum was killing him. It was also making him stronger than me first. The mission clock fell under 1 minute. I fired Crimson Torrent into his face. Ambrose walked through it and broke 2 of my ribs with his knee. Fiend's grasp closed around him. He ripped the giant hand apart. Freya tried to reach us from the battlefield. Ambrose backhanded her through 3 trees, Inferno Mantle and all, without releasing me. The blood moon was still active. My full team was still fighting. Ambrose had overpowered me anyway. He lifted me above the broken ridge. Both my sons died because of you, he snarled. I gripped his wrist and looked at the mission clock. 9 seconds. That sounds like a parenting review. I activated the last Spider Queen reward. Black chains erupted beneath Ambrose. The mournful moon gallows formed around his body and locked every limb inside the execution frame. He flexed. The chains held. The gallows ignored raw strength once it locked on one target. One use. No second chance. Ambrose's restored face finally showed fear. The execution blade fell. His head struck the stone as the clock held at 9 seconds. The grieving tyrant had brought an army, burned a village, promised away his inheritance, and overdosed back into youth. He still died calling for sons who had already lost. Urgent mission complete. The gallows vanished. I dropped beside Ambrose's body and forced my wings open again. Then I faced the remaining coalition. My enemy is dead, I told them. Leave Nightvale. Most guild fighters looked at Ambrose's body, the blood moon, and the followers still holding their lines. They left. The hunted monster gave one order, and the respectable army suddenly remembered appointments elsewhere. Cormac stayed. The civic valor leader lowered his weapon without putting it away. My guards remain dead. I leave when I know who killed them. Shelby stayed too. The Iron Siren's leader rested her weapon across one shoulder. My women came for a fight. Your followers made it interesting. Different reasons, same refusal. Dr. Odette backed away slowly while everyone watched me. Then Ambrose's corpse began glowing from inside. The massive serum dose was still reacting. Cracks of white fire opened across his skin. The energy beneath them rose past the force of his final attacks. The dead man had become a bomb large enough to finish the village after losing. Of course he had. One final family inconvenience. A shadow covered the mountain. Ariella Crosby arrived above Nightvale on a sky leviathan. The mountain-sized summoned spirit belonged to the supreme head of the association's Ridgeway branch. It opened its mouth and swallowed Ambrose's body whole. The explosion detonated inside it. Its sides expanded once. Then the spirit closed its mouth and looked mildly annoyed. I had spent 5 minutes fighting Ambrose. Ariella's summon treated his last attack like bad takeout. The power gap was rude and extremely clear. Ariella landed only after my duel was finished. A later association report showed that her team had matched the false aura to Callum's residue. The same report traced crime scene access to Ambrose's private doctor. Her first words went to the 2 leaders who had stayed. The checkpoint aura was copied from Callum Donovan's recovered body, Ariella told Cormac. Ambrose's doctor had access to the residue and both crime scenes. Cormac finally lowered his weapon. His people were still dead, but the target had changed. Shelby glanced toward the place Dr. Odette had been standing. The doctor ran! Odette had slipped away during the corpse crisis. Her frame was exposed. Her punishment remained unpaid. Dorothea Hargrove came down beside Ariella. Dorothea was the head of Scarlet Bastion. She was also Twyla's mother. I looked from Dorothea to Twyla. You gave me everybody's household records and forgot that detail? Twyla wiped blood from her mouth. She read my memories without permission. This is not the time to discuss my filing standards. Dorothea met my stare and accepted the accusation. She had shown Ariella what she learned before they flew to Nightvale. I was Garrett Durham, the supposedly dead porter. I still protected Autumn. I had killed humans who attacked my followers, then saved civilians those same factions tried to burn. Ariella looked directly at me. We know where your sister is. Every remaining trace of humor left the scene. I raised Nightblood Greatsword again. If anyone touches Autumn, the city gets another crater. She is safe, Ariella answered. Dorothea's people reached her before Ambrose's coalition could connect the name. Twyla stepped between us. My mother crossed a line. She also kept Scarlet Bastion out of his attack. The mother-daughter wound stayed open. The protection still mattered. Behind us, Nightvale Village was burning. The old homes were gone. Several villagers were injured. The summoning chamber had split down the center. I looked at Sylvie. I admitted, I was late. Sylvie took my burned hand. You came back. That was all she said. I summoned Crimson Keep. Red-black lights spread over the ruined village. The floating fortress rose above the smoke, lowered bridges into the square, and opened its healing field across every registered resident. Burns closed. Broken bones stabilized. The wounded succubi stood one by one. One elder entered with both hands burned and left the first healing chamber carrying a child. A guard whose leg had been crushed walked onto the bridge under his own power. One injured villager after another stood again. The destroyed home stayed gone. Crimson Keep gave Nightvale walls above the ground, healing chambers, and protected rooms. One meteor could no longer crush our home. The villagers crossed the bridges carrying what remained of their lives. Sylvie reached the central balcony and looked down at the ruins. Then she looked around the fortress that had replaced them. Nightvale had lost a village. It gained a castle. Inside the central hall, Ariella placed a Federal Evolved Association badge on the table between us. I can make Autumn's protection legal, she said. I can also make your followers legal residents instead of targets. Brute force had saved my people. Ariella was offering a way to keep them safe while I was elsewhere. Inside Crimson Keep, Ariella Crosby pushed the Federal Evolved Association badge toward me. Her offer started with the only line that mattered. Join us, and Autumn Durham receives federal protection immediately. Picked up the badge. Ariella had prepared a longer speech. I could tell because she still held a small stack of pages. She lowered them. Membership also gave my registered followers legal residency, protected travel into human cities, and access to work or education. Autumn's school costs and future employment would be guaranteed under my status. Those benefits mattered. Sylvie asked whether the residency covered horns, wings, and petrification accidents. Ariella answered that deliberate petrification remained a crime. Briar leaned toward Twyla. So, accidental petrification has paperwork? Twyla replied. Do not test the wording. For the first time, my followers could enter a human city without hiding what they were. Their posture changed before Ariella finished listing the terms. My sister came first. I had spent years taking suppression jobs so she could keep studying. Ariella had just offered protection stronger than any wall I could personally stand beside. So I accepted before anyone could turn it into a committee meeting. The association's next demand was less inspiring. They needed 3 biological samples to classify a human-born blood fiend: saliva, blood, and 1 intimate sample. I stared at Ariella. Ariella looked at the form. Sylvie read it over her shoulder and smiled far too quickly. "My lord, I can assist." Twyla folded her arms. "Of course you can." Briar leaned through the doorway. "Do they need a witness?" "No," Ariella, Twyla, and I answered together. The first 2 samples took less than a minute. The third required Sylvie and a locked room. Ariella supervised the sealed container from the far wall and never looked up from the form. Once the case clicked shut, I came out. Twyla asked whether national security had survived. Briar offered to help with quality control. Sylvie informed both of them that the position had been filled. Ariella sealed the case harder than necessary. Professional authority, completely intact. Mostly. She scheduled my formal evolved assessment for 7 days later in Crown Point City. Publicly, the delay gave the association time to prepare a rare species evaluation. Ariella quietly placed me in the last slot near nightfall, where Night Predator would be strongest. "Give them a result high enough to stop calling you an animal," Ariella told me. It was her first practical favor after recruitment. The deadline created a problem. The remaining adult orc reserve covered the daily quest through the 7-day gap. That kept the sunrise penalty from interrupting the training plan. I had beaten Ambrose with 1-use tools, teamwork, and a 5-minute system mission. The public assessment would measure my own current strength. Normal training needed longer than 7 days. Sylvie had another idea. On the first night inside Crimson Keep, Sylvie gathered roughly 200 adult succubi in the central hall. Then, she revealed a species technique we had never used. Succubi normally drained energy from a partner. They could reverse that flow, but every adult had to choose it, and Sylvie had to keep the group synchronized. She divided the volunteers into rotating groups before anyone touched me. That kept the transfer controlled and gave each woman time to recover. I looked across the hall. "You knew this was possible?" Sylvie touched one finger to my chest. "We knew our people could transfer power. We lacked a blood fiend and a fortress that restored him afterward." Briar appeared beside us. "This sounds like irresponsible science," Twyla answered from the stairs. "That is why he likes it." They knew me too well. The first group reversed its drain together. One synchronized wave drove demonic energy through my body and nearly folded my knees. Strength packed into my muscles. My senses sharpened. Blood wings snapped open without being called and hit both walls. I grabbed a railing to steady myself. The metal bent in my hand. The succubi cheered until Sylvie warned them that the next push might remove the ceiling. Then the transfer stopped. My body should have needed hours. 5 minutes inside. Crimson Keep erased the strain, closed the damage, and returned my breathing to normal. The new strength stayed. That was the loophole. We repeated the technique in controlled waves. The women rotated. Crimson Keep restored me, and each round left permanent power behind. The cost showed up in control. Early in the week, I sneezed and blasted every chair into the wall. Briar inspected the damage. "Legendary!" Twyla pointed at the chairs. "He lost a fight to furniture." I had survived 3 Donovans. Domestic arguments kept beating me. Humbling. The central hall doors kept closing all week. The results showed everywhere. By the middle of the week, my resting aura bent railings. I could hold blood wings open for hours, but every landing still made the floor jump. Freya called that progress in the most insulting tone available. By day 7, Sylvie reinforced the chamber before my heartbeat cracked the windows. Fiend's grasp crossed the full hall. Crimson Torrent stayed balanced in my hands. I could land without making a crater and dismiss my wings without removing anyone's clothes. Crimson Keep had become a gym, a hospital, and the most dangerous scheduling problem on Earth. Every participant received recovery, protection, and a safer village base. I received enough power to face the assessment without borrowing another temporary miracle. 1 week later, Ariella arrived before sunset on a giant skybird. She landed on Crimson Keep's upper platform and stopped when my aura reached her. Ariella's eyes narrowed. "You feel different." I stepped onto the bird behind her. "That sounds positive." Ariella tightened her grip on the reins. "It sounds medically irresponsible," I reminded her. "You supervised the paperwork." Ariella's face warmed at the memory of the sample room. She faced forward immediately. "We are discussing your power." I gave her my most innocent voice. "Of course." The skybird launched toward Crown Point City before Sylvie could make the conversation worse. The assessment center occupied an entire federal tower. Public score screens covered the main hall, and representatives from every major faction waited behind the barriers. One young man stood directly beneath the largest screen, as though the building had been constructed around him. Zane Tucker was an 18-year-old gold upper prodigy scheduled for assessment before me. He had brought a tailored combat suit, a private camera crew, and enough confidence for 3 people. When the first Supreme Observer entered, Zane adjusted his collar and stepped forward. Tamsin Redwood was a senior association combatant known for testing unusual recruits. She was elegant, calm, and impossible to ignore. Half the hall stopped watching Zane when she entered. Zane smiled at her. Tamsin walked past him. A second supreme presence entered behind her. Stellan Hollander was a blind swordsman assigned to judge whether I threatened humans. He carried no visible interest in Zane, the cameras, or anybody's self-esteem. Zane still misunderstood the room. He waved his crew closer. They came to observe my record. Then Ariella's skybird landed on the assessment platform outside the glass wall. Every camera turned away from him. I stepped down beside Ariella. Zane checked the crowd, checked Tamsin, and finally checked the name appearing over the main screen. Garrett Durham, Blood Fiend candidate. His smile lasted until the main screen changed. Respectable effort. Tamsin met me at the entrance. Your village defense cost a great deal of paperwork, she said. I looked at her formal combat dress. In my defense, it looks better when you deliver it. Tamsin laughed once. Tamsin leaned closer. Pass first, Garrett, then I'll decide whether your flirting deserves federal approval. I smiled. Finally, a measurable standard. Ariella looked at me over one shoulder. Try to pass before flirting with the observers. I told her, I'm building international relations. Stellan stepped between us. His blind eyes faced mine, and the pressure from his sword stopped every nearby conversation. If you begin feeding on innocent humans, Stellan told me, I will kill you. No smile, no ceremony. I held his attention, then watch closely. Innocent people are safe around me. Anyone who attacks my family becomes my problem. Stellan's hand stayed on the sword. Prove it. The nearest faction representatives stepped back from the barrier. Zane stopped smiling and looked silently down at the polished floor. The warning kept the assessment honest. I had legal status for 1 week. The strongest people in the building still wanted evidence that my mind belonged to me, so I gave them performance instead of a speech. The strength test used a reinforced impact pillar. Zane had cracked its first layer. His camera crew had replayed the hit 3 times. I hit it once. Every layer registered maximum output, and the machine shut down before the pillar stopped shaking. A technician checked the emergency switch, checked me, and moved behind the safety glass. The speed course opened next. I crossed every gate before the first display refreshed. The replay had to slow until Bloodstep became visible between frames. Zane asked whether teleportation invalidated the result. The examiner kept the score. Zane saw every camera replaying my run and closed his mouth. The spirit crystal filled from clear to black-red and displayed a perfect score. Stellan tilted his head toward the alarm. Tamsin stepped closer instead of away. The stamina platform increased gravity until every gold candidate dropped. I stayed upright through the final setting. When the pressure released, the floor beneath my boots remained compressed. Control, reaction, recovery, and energy output followed in one brutal run. I caught moving targets without breaking them, and healed test cuts before the medic finished typing. Then I held several blood constructs steady while the technicians moved farther behind the safety glass. Every baseline screen returned the same word, perfect. The hall stopped comparing me to Zane. Technicians started checking whether the machines had failed. Zane's camera crew rolled its equipment toward my lane without asking him. He stood beneath his own score alone. Tamsin folded her arms and smiled with open approval. Stellan finally moved his hand away from his sword. The final test measured future potential. Eden Pruitt entered from the sealed assessment room. She was 24, an adult licensed potential assessor, and her sensory gift required brief tongue contact with a candidate's fingertip. Yes, the federal government had found a second awkward biological procedure in 1 week. Eden put on gloves, explained the contact, and waited for my consent. I held out one hand. Her tongue touched the tip of my finger. Eden's eyes turned white. Her body lifted from the floor and slammed backward into the padded wall. Every score screen in the hall flashed red at once. The spirit crystal beside us cracked from the center, even though I had never touched it. Tamsin caught Eden before she fell. Stellan drew a sliver of steel. Ariella moved between him and me. Zane's camera crew lowered every lens. My hands had stayed still. Eden's own gift had entered something inside my growth space and been thrown out. She opened her eyes, saw me, and crawled backward before remembering the whole hall was watching. End the test, Eden gasped. Public evaluators reviewed my current results and issued the highest rank they could defend without revealing Eden's sealed reading. Above Crown Point City, the main screen lit up. My score moved from the assessment hall to the exterior tower display, then into the national broadcast feed. Public rank, legendary, upper. National title awarded, Demon Breaker, Blood Crowned. Faction representatives who had entered discussing containment began requesting meetings. Security officers who had watched my arrival with weapons ready lowered them and opened the restricted exit without being asked. The dead porter who once carried other people's bags now stood above the experts who had refused to value his life. Cameras broadcast the result across the country. Ridgeway Central High showed the announcement on its hallway screens. The association later gave me the security clip. Autumn stopped beneath one screen with her books against her chest. My face appeared above the title. She dropped the books, covered her mouth, and stepped closer until her hand touched the glass. My sister finally had proof that I was alive. The clip continued. Autumn picked up one book, dropped it again, then laughed while wiping her face with the sleeve of her uniform. A teacher approached, saw my name on the screen, and quietly moved the other students back to give her space. I watched that clip more times than I ever admitted. Our direct reunion still had to wait. Autumn knew I was alive, and federal protection now covered her school and home. For that day, I could live with the distance. Eden's sealed report reached me much later. Inside my growth space, Eden had encountered a future fiend god presence. Its pressure expelled her gift before she could reach the center. She reported that my potential exceeded supreme and might reach peerless, a tier almost nobody alive could claim. Director Fulton Dunley, the national president of the Federal Evolved Association, kept that ceiling out of the public record. Legendary, upper was already enough to attract every faction in the country. Peerless would have attracted foreign powers before I understood my own limits, so the public received a legendary monster with a national title. Tanzin congratulated me in front of the cameras. Stellan gave one short nod and left without repeating his threat. Zane stood beneath the same giant screen he had claimed earlier and watched my name cover his score. My official result went live before I returned to Crimson Keep. Reporters traced Ariella's flight route, the assessment registration, and the restored village's location. Going public was supposed to make me safer. Instead, it gave every camera, faction, and future enemy my address. By the time I returned to Crimson Keep, reporters had surrounded our landing platform. The National Assessment had published my route straight to Night Vale. Federal protection had given my followers legal status and given every camera crew in the country our address. The press treated the floating fortress like a public attraction. One reporter leaned over the outer rail to film the healing courtyards. Another tried to follow a village family through a private door. 3 more shouted questions about my followers, my blood, my title, and whether I planned to enter professional gaming. A 4th reporter asked whether Sylvie was my assistant, my wife, or my public relations problem. Sylvie leaned toward the microphone. First follower, I added, favorite problem. Her smile turned warm for me and dangerous for the reporter. I assumed that part was obvious. Briar leaned over the upper balcony and offered to answer every question for a fee. Twyla pulled her back before she created a subscription service. I called up, you don't know half the answers. Briar grinned. Neither do they. That's why mine are premium. I still can't explain why a vampire assessment became an esports interview. The succubi guarding the platform tried their traditional punishment. Violet whips snapped across expensive coats. The magic caused pleasure instead of injury, so the reporters stopped retreating and started fighting for better camera angles. One man raised both hands and yelled, "Do that again for the livestream!" The guards looked personally betrayed by their own species' ability. Sylvie met me at the landing stairs with both wings rigid. "My lord," she said, "the humans are enjoying discipline incorrectly." The reporter pushed a microphone toward her. Sylvie Morn, how many women currently share the castle with Garrett Durham? Sylvie smiled at the lens. More than you can interview before he destroys that camera. The reporter turned toward me. Mr. Durham, is that a threat? I raised one hand. Fiend's grasp formed above the platform as a giant, blood-red hand. It closed around every camera, drone, microphone, and recording case at once. Plastic cracked. Lenses shattered. Memory cards rained into one neat pile. Nobody was injured. Every live stream died together. That was the first organized thing the press had accomplished all morning. I walked to the broken equipment. Crimson Keep is a home, I told them. Night Vale's residents are not content. Step past the public platform again, and you leave without the equipment you brought. The reporters finally backed toward their aircraft. One crew tried to keep a phone recording from inside its vehicle. Fiend's grasp tapped the windshield once. The phone disappeared below the dashboard, and the driver suddenly remembered an urgent appointment elsewhere. One woman looked at the ruined cameras and asked who would pay. I pointed toward the sky, the person who ignored the boundary. Ariella Crosby landed beside me on her Skybird after the last crew retreated. The Supreme Association branch leader watched the departing aircraft, then the pile of crushed gear. "You erased the footage," Ariella said. "You also gave them a headline." "They crossed into private rooms," I told her. Ariella rubbed her forehead. "You can't crush every camera crew that annoys you." I nodded at the wreckage. "Only the ones inside my home." Ariella's gaze moved from the camera pile to me. "You make bad decisions look annoyingly confident." "Careful," I said. "That sounded like a compliment." "Almost." Ariella's mouth twitched. Then, one heavy hoof-cracked stone behind us. Sabine Whitfield waited at the far end of the platform. My centaur follower had held the line against the Spider Queen. She protected Nightvale during the war and watched Freya and Briar receive every reward she wanted. Her centaur body had reshaped. 4 powerful human-like legs now supported her torso in a wide, stable frame built to carry a rider. Sabine lifted her chin. I created a riding form! I looked at all 4 legs. The system's cursed equipment department had apparently expanded into relationship counseling. Sabine caught my expression. You complain every time the system gives you an unusual solution, I answered. I also use every unusual solution, Sabine replied. That is why I prepared one. Her restraint broke on the last word. Sabine had reshaped her body for me after I rewarded newer followers first. A system notice opened between us. System quest activated. Resolve Sabine Whitfield's neglected bond and complete her affinity. Sabine had already delivered the insult herself. She stepped closer. I held the Queen's strongest strike. At Nightvale, falling stone landed on my shield. Then you rewarded Freya and Briar while I stood there empty-handed. I told her, you were right to be angry. Sabine's ears shifted back. She had expected an excuse and got none. I treated your strength like it would wait forever, I told her. That was my mistake. Sabine studied my face, then lowered her body into the new stance. Ride with me, she ordered. A warrior's apology requires proof. I mounted behind her shoulders. Sabine launched across Crimson Keep. She cleared the upper bridge and ran the outer wall while the last reporters stared from beyond Fiend's grasp. Naturally, the strangest story still escaped. Sabine stopped on the private western terrace and looked back. Does the form satisfy you? Answered. It solved the balance problem. Sabine's eyes narrowed. That was not my question. Her affinity moved before I answered. Affinity told the truth. Again. I slid down and faced her. You're powerful, beautiful, and impossible to overlook. Sabine's controlled expression finally broke. Sabine shut the terrace doors herself. When they opened again, the system had recorded the result. Sabine Whitfield. Follower affinity, 100%. Blood Fiend essence transferred. Sabine Whitfield advanced to Tier 6 middle. Her aura struck the terrace walls hard enough to bend the railing. Then Soulforge answered. Black-red plates formed around my chest, locked together without weight, and reflected the terrace light back at Sabine. Exclusive equipment acquired. Sabine's mirror armor. Effect. Reflects a portion of received damage toward the attacker. A second reward appeared above Sabine's palm, a green crystal almost the size of a melon. Nature energy rolled across the terrace, pushed vines between the stone tiles, and turned every leaf toward her. Unique follower reward acquired. Verdant Heart. Effect. Doubles compatible nature-type abilities after core fusion. Sabine touched the mirror armor. Now my reward protects you too. I caught her wrist. You protected me before the reward. Her affinity held at 100. Sylvie opened the terrace door and found Sabine standing openly beside me. Her eyes checked the bent railing, mirror armor, and Sabine's position. Sabine held her ground. Her rank, armor, and place were finally visible. The next choice was simple. Twyla alone could use the Verdant Heart. That afternoon, I took the Verdant Heart to an empty mountain training field below Crimson Keep. Twyla Hargrove waited there in her ice combat uniform. My diamond follower had the strongest compatible nature ability in the group. She looked at the enormous green crystal. That goes inside me? Twyla asked. I told her, it fuses with your energy core. Her eyes narrowed. Where exactly is the core? I pointed at the center of her abdomen. Around your navel. Please stop looking at me like I designed this. Twyla pressed one hand over the spot. Your system has terrible bedside manners. I lifted the crystal. The equipment department handles customer service too. I placed the Verdant Heart against her core. Green light sank beneath her uniform. Twyla's back arched, frost exploded across the field, and the Verdant Heart vanished inside her body. For one quiet second, nothing moved. Then winter expanded in every direction. The nearest ridge turned white. The frozen line crossed the valley and climbed the distant slopes. It kept moving until 10 miles of mountain terrain fell inside Twyla's ice domain. Every flake answered her. Every frozen surface carried her awareness. Twyla raised one hand. A wall of ice rose miles away and split a cloud of dust before it reached us. She looked at the white horizon and smiled. Twyla pointed at the frozen valley. Field test? I opened Bloodwings. Field battle. Twyla's smile changed. Field battle? That's your opening line now? I clarified. I meant sparring. Twyla smiled. Coward. She attacked before I could defend my vocabulary. Ice spears came from 3 ridges at once. I flew above the first wave, cut through the second with Nightblood Greatsword, and used Bloodstep past the third. Twyla already knew where I would land. The entire domain belonged to her senses. Ice locked around one wing. She pulled me down, stepped inside my guard, and caught my shoulders between both legs before driving me into the snow. Twyla held me there with a very satisfied expression. Twyla tightened the pin. Does my performance satisfy you? Looked up at her. The domain works. Twyla's smile widened. That was not my question either. Apparently, my followers had coordinated their dialogue. I broke the ice around my wing, rolled us once, and caught her waist before she could reform the pin. You impressed me, I told her. Reward approved. Twyla's domain closed around us and buried the rest beneath fresh snow. When we returned to Crimson Keep, the system issued a warning instead of another celebration. Follower affinity must be maintained. If a follower falls below maximum affinity, unique rewards and Soulforge equipment may deactivate. I read the warning aloud. Twyla looked at the frost curling around her glove. So your rewards can shut off if you start neglecting us. Apparently, she gave me a flat look. Good. The system finally added consequences for you. The number beside Twyla remained at 100. Sabine's did too. Twyla pulled on her coat and handed me a sealed invitation from Scarlet Bastion. My mother wants you to join us, she said. Scarlet Bastion can give you territory, personnel, and a recognized command structure. Dorothea Hargrove's offer was practical. Twyla's expression said she wanted me closed for reasons the invitation did not list. I handed it back unopened. I spent too long being somebody else's expendable asset. I will not become a faction's rare monster. Twyla did not argue. Then build your own, I answered. That is the plan. She gave me the ugly part immediately. Scarlet Bastion could register me immediately. My own large organization needed a qualifying combat record. The rule fit into one sentence. Defeat one verified Tier 7 beast. Twyla opened the commission board. One Tier 7 upper request had remained unclaimed for months. The target lived inside Blackwater Expanse, a monster-filled marsh large enough to hide an army. I accepted the commission. Ariella arrived before we departed with a warning from Director Fulton Dunley. Imogen Radley was sighted inside Blackwater, Ariella said. She is a fugitive Supreme Tier witch. We do not know what she wants there. Twyla crossed her arms. The commission lists one Tier 7 beast. Ariella looked at me. Imogen is above the commission. I fastened Sabine's mirror armor beneath my coat. Then, I planned for the witch too. Ariella stepped closer. You could postpone this, I answered. I could also join Scarlet Bastion and let another faction decide my future. Twyla moved beside me. For the record, I offered politely. Ariella's eyes moved to Twyla. Are you going with him? Twyla took my arm. It is our first official trip after the assessment. I am calling it a date. I opened Bloodwings. It is a Tier 7 work order. Twyla tightened her hold on my arm. Your dates need better branding. Before sunset, I carried Twyla over the outer mountains and into Blackwater Expanse. She held me tighter whenever the wind shifted and denied enjoying the flight every time I looked back. Affinity remained brutally honest. Blackwater spread beneath us as dark lakes, drowned trees, and moving islands of reeds. Human detectors failed inside the mist, so we landed on a stone ridge near the center. I summoned Briar, Morella, Freya, and Sabine through Victor's bond. The 4 followers formed a half-circle while Twyla froze a safe path through the mud. The Tier 7 target is somewhere inside this marsh, I told them. Split up! Kill hostile males! Preserve adult females! Report any Tier 7 trace immediately. Briar smiled. So I am shopping. I want survivors, not merchandise, I told her. Briar's eyes brightened. You always ruin my best sales pitch. Freya lit one hand. I am burning obstacles. Sabine lowered her lance. I am finding something worthy. Morella touched the wraith pendant at my neck before turning away. Try not to make the marsh jealous while I'm gone. The 4 bonds spread in 4 directions. I had turned one search into 4 danger lanes because speed mattered more than comfort. The first distress signal would come from Morella. Inside Blackwater Expanse, the 6 of us split at the stone ridge. Twyla stayed with me while Briar, Freya, Sabine, and Morella took 4 separate lanes. The follower bond gave me each woman's direction and condition. The exact fights came from their reports later. Twyla froze our central path as Blackwater swallowed the old ice behind us. The split saved time, but a follower could be surrounded before the rest of us crossed one flooded ridge. Blackwater also made distance lie. A bond could feel close while fog, deep water, and moving mud sat between us. I had made the call, so the first bad signal would be my bill. Briar reached the western reed forest first. Her bond stayed calm until adult crow women dropped from the canopy. Hooked spears and black wings blocked the path. Briar told me later that the first attacker ordered her to leave their nesting ground. She saw a group of living adult women, remembered my daily quest, and switched from killing poison to capture. The crow women attacked from above. Briar filled the air with tentacles. One spear stopped inches from her face. A tentacle wrapped the shaft, pulled its owner from the sky, and placed her gently into a tightening coil. 3 more attackers dove from different sides. Briar caught 2 by the ankles and trapped the 3rd inside a wall of regenerating limbs. The flock changed tactics. Feather blades cut through several restraints while 2 Winans circled behind her. Briar let the severed tentacles fall, regenerated new ones, and caught the flankers when they committed. Their own speed carried them straight into the coils. The flock tried to climb again. Briar spread venom mist across the treetops. The poison numbed their wings without stopping their hearts. They dropped into waiting restraints one after another. By the time the reeds settled, every adult crow woman was alive, furious, and tied together beneath the trees. Briar later presented the result with both hands raised like she had completed a delivery. I brought inventory, she told me. They're captives, I said. Stop making my daily quest sound like warehouse management. Briar smiled. You only complain because I'm efficient. Keep them alive, and I'll compliment you later. Briar looked far too pleased with herself. The shameless mimic understood my logistics too well. Her lane produced no Tier 7 trace. It gave us a new group of living adult targets. The next sunrise became easier. The Tier 7 target remained missing. Then follower kill experience started pouring in from the north. Freya's bond flared hot enough to sting across my chest. The flame witch had crossed a patch of dry ground when ratmen burst from below. They caught her legs with chains and dragged her into an underground tunnel network. The ambush landed. Freya disappeared beneath the marsh before she could open her wings. The ratmen pulled her through packed earth toward a nest spreading under miles of reeds. Their chains pinned her arms and legs low. At each junction, more ratmen threw wet hides over her flames and dragged her farther from open air. The first ambush had worked, so they crowded closer. Freya told me later that one of them called her a captured lamp. That was a terrible word choice around the woman I had once assigned to cave lighting. Freya stopped fighting the chains. The ratmen crowded closer. Then she drove both hands into the tunnel floor. Her upgraded flames compressed into white-red heat. Stone melted. Underground water flashed into steam. Lava burst through the connected passages and ran beneath the marsh for 10 miles. Every ratman in the tunnel network received the same lesson at once. My system notifications became a solid stream of shared experience. Freya erupted from the ground inside a pillar of fire. The tunnel entrances collapsed behind her, and a ring of marsh water boiled away from the impact. When she reported back, soot covered one cheek and satisfaction covered everything else. Still think I am a lamp? Freya asked. I looked at the 10-mile line of smoking ground. You upgraded to regional heating. Freya wiped soot from one cheek. That sounded almost affectionate. Don't overheat, she grinned. That counted as enough apology for one report. Her lane also produced no Tier 7 target. The third feedback pulse came from Sabine. She had taken the eastern mudflats, where pale larvae the size of carts pushed through the soil around her hooves. Sabine crushed the first one beneath her lance shaft. 2 more erupted behind her. Mirror-bright energy moved through her new Tier 6 aura as she trampled one and split the other down the center. The larvae kept coming. Sabine lowered her shield, charged across the flats, and destroyed every creature that surfaced. Shared experience reached me in short bursts. Then the mud stopped moving. Sabine planted her lance and called the entire area disappointing. The ground answered. A Tier 6 upper adult worm rose beneath her. Its body pushed through the flats like a moving wall. Each segment carried old scars, and its mouth opened around several rings of stone-cutting teeth. The creature had followed the dead larvae to their killer. Sabine looked up at something large enough to swallow her new riding form whole. Finally, she told it, a proper opponent. The worms struck first. Sabine planted her shield and caught the descending head. Mud erupted around all 4 legs. The impact pushed her backward across the flats, but her new Tier 6 body stayed upright. She lowered the shield, aimed her lance at the creature's open mouth, and charged before the mud settled. The impact spiked through her bond. Then the signal steadied as she charged. No result followed. The adult worm remained her fight. Then Morella's bond changed. She had taken the southern flower basin. At first, her bond stayed steady. The basin held no visible beast, only waist-high flowers and pale pink pollen drifting above the water. Morella was my Tier 5 middle banshee follower. She could break formations with one scream and had survived the Spider Queen and the Night Veil War. The pollen entered her lungs before she found anything to attack. Heat spread through her body, her pulse accelerated, her hands started shaking against her will. Morella told me afterward that she first blamed her old sensitivity from the arena, then vines erupted from beneath the flowers. One caught her wrist, another wrapped her waist. A third pulled both legs from under her and dragged her deeper into the basin. Morella released a death wail. The flowers bent, the vines held. She turned the scream into a focused pulse and shattered several stems around her. New vines rose from farther beneath the water and replaced them before she could stand. The enemy remained hidden inside the flower basin while the field itself kept attacking. More pink pollen burst around her face. The effect attacked desire and body control together. It created a fatal compulsion for intimate contact while stripping away the patience needed to resist it. Morella fought the vines, but every movement spread more pollen across her skin. Her bond flashed once. Then it screamed. I stopped on a narrow marsh path beside Twyla. Marilla! Twyla saw my face and formed an ice bridge toward the southern basin. Go, she ordered. I looked into the fog. The mist is blocking your range. I can protect myself. Twyla pushed the bridge farther through the reeds. She called you because she cannot. Leaving Twyla alone created another risk. Staying guaranteed, Marilla lost the fight inside her body. I opened Bloodwings and launched south. The mist blocked a straight route. I climbed above the drowned trees, found Marilla's direction through the bond, and drove back down whenever the fog broke. Twice, something moved beneath the water and followed my shadow. I ignored both shapes. Marilla had sent the death signal. Anything else could wait. The follower bond pulled harder with every second. Behind me, Twyla remained beside a black lake with the verdant heart active beneath her core. What happened after I left came from her direct report. The marsh went quiet around her. A branch snapped across the lake. Twyla froze the nearest reeds and turned toward the sound. She had faced 2 legendary Donovans and an army without blinking. Empty swamps still reminded her of ghost stories. A second sound moved under the water. Twyla muttered, "Please be a monster." The lake exploded. A Tier 6 Naga rose from the water with a scaled human-like torso above a long serpent body. It carried a curved blade and stared directly at the green light beneath Twyla's uniform. "Give me the verdant heart," the Naga demanded. Twyla exhaled once. "Good. A monster." The Naga looked offended by her relief and sent the whole lake toward her as a crushing wave. Twyla opened her 10-mile domain. The wave froze above her head. Ice spread from that suspended wall through the entire lake. The surface locked first. Then the cold drove downward until every current, plant, and hidden channel became solid. The Naga tried to dive. Its tail was already trapped. Twyla stepped onto the frozen water and raised one hand. Thousands of ice shards formed beneath the surface and pointed toward the creature from every direction. The Naga slashed the first wave apart. Twyla closed her fist. The frozen lake compressed around it. Ice broke through the Naga's defense and sealed its body inside a clear pillar. Before the final fracture reached its throat, the creature whispered, "Imogen Radley, forgive me." Twyla shattered the pillar. The Naga died inside the lake it had used as its weapon. Then, its body changed. Scales shrank. The human-like torso folded inward. The Tier 6 monster became an ordinary-looking green water snake frozen on the lake surface. Twyla's later report described the frozen snake in exact detail. Director Fulton's warning had mentioned Imogen Radley. The Naga's last words and the animal body suggested the fugitive witch had temporarily evolved the native creature. The Naga had attacked for the verdant heart, so Twyla's new reward had already become bait. It gave her the power to dominate the lake and painted a target over her core. The system loved sending invoices. Imogen's purpose remained unknown. By then, I had reached Morella's basin. Pink pollen covered the southern marsh like smoke. The basin looked peaceful from above. Pale flowers floated between patches of clear water, and no large beast showed itself. That made the scene worse. A Tier 7 presence had built the trap, yet the only visible target was the woman already caught inside it. Marilla hung several feet above the water inside a cage of vines. Her banshee aura flared in broken pulses. Every pulse weakened faster than the last. The wraith pendant turned cold against my chest as I entered the field. Its spirit resistance kept the compulsion outside my mind. My poison resistance slowed the heat spreading through my blood. Slowed, nothing more. I flew straight through the pollen. One vine snapped toward my throat. Nightblood greatsword cut it apart. 2 more wrapped my wing. I used Fiend's Grasp to tear them from the roots and dropped beside Marilla. Her eyes found me through the haze. "Do not breathe," Marilla warned. I answered, "A little late." I cut the vines around her wrists, then the ones binding her waist and legs. Marilla fell into my arms. She was free of the plant. Her skin remained hot. Her pulse kept accelerating. The poison had already entered every part of her body. The system identified the attack. Tier 7 Upper Siren Bloom Pollen detected. Victim condition, fatal compulsion poison. Time limit, 1 hour. Required survival condition, paired detoxification. I carried Marilla toward the cleanest patch of ground outside the vines. The flowers turned toward us as we moved. None opened. None attacked again. At the time, getting her out mattered more than asking why. She gripped my coat hard enough to tear it. "Garrett," Marilla said, forcing each word through the poison. "Cutting me free did not remove it." The hidden Tier 7 beast had already moved the fight inside her body. Marilla had 1 hour to complete the poison's condition or die. Marilla had 1 hour before the Siren Bloom's poison killed her. I carried her beyond the thickest vines, but pink pollen still clung to her clothes and hair. Her body shook against mine while the system repeated the same survival condition, paired detoxification required. The rule gave us one path and no comfortable way to discuss it. Marilla forced her eyes open. "Put me down," she said. I lowered her onto a patch of dry ground between 2 drowned trees. She kept one hand locked around my sleeve. The poison is controlling my body, Morella said. It is not choosing for me. Her breathing broke between the words. I knelt where she could see me clearly. Then tell me your choice. Morella pulled me closer. I choose to live, she said. And I choose you. Then she kissed me. The poison crossed through the contact. Heat hit my blood hard enough to stop my breath. The wraith pendant flashed cold against my chest, cracked the first wave, and failed against the concentrated dose. My poison resistance slowed the spread for one heartbeat. The wraith pendant flashed again while my poison resistance pushed back. Together, they bought a few seconds. The concentrated dose kept spreading because the Tier 7 condition had already taken hold. Morella caught both my wrists. The resistance can buy time, cannot rewrite the condition. She had survived enough arena magic to recognize the difference. Then the effect reached everything. Concentrated Siren Bloom poison transferred. Garrett Durham and Morella Crawford are both in fatal condition. Complete pair detoxification immediately. Failure results in death. Morella had pulled me into the same death clock. The system now listed Garrett Durham and Morella Crawford under one fatal condition, with one shared route out. Abandoning her was impossible even if I had wanted to. I looked past her at the silent flower basin. No creature moved between the vines. No second attack came. The poison had already forced the decision. A vine shifted beneath the water and settled again. Morella's fingers tightened around my collar. Nothing approached. The entire basin remained too quiet for a place that had just poisoned 2 people. I carried Morella behind a wall of roots where the open basin could not see us clearly. Before anything else, I made her look at me again. The poison set the deadline, I said. You still control the answer. Do you want me to continue? Yes. Morella tightened both hands in my coat. Stay. So I stayed. Behind the roots, the system tracked the only result I needed. The poison pressure climbed until my vision darkened. Morella's banshee aura flickered against my chest. My resistances bought us seconds while the poison kept climbing. At the worst point, the follower bond blurred. Twyla, Freya, Briar, and Sabine became distant pulses I could barely separate. Morella's pulse remained beside mine, fast and stubborn. I held on to that one signal. She did too. Then the heat began to fall. Poison saturation decreasing. Paired detoxification complete. Fatal condition removed. Survival was the reward. My muscles still shook, and Morella's aura had dropped to a weak pulse. During the detoxification, both of us had been helpless. After it, neither of us could stand. I remained awake long enough to confirm Morella was breathing normally. Then both of us collapsed beneath the roots. When I opened my eyes, the light above Blackwater had changed. The sun had dropped behind the mist, and thin gold light cut through the drowned trees. My mirror armor remained locked around my chest. The wraith pendant had gone warm after the concentrated dose overwhelmed its resistance. Nightblood greatsword lay within reach where I had dropped it. Morella lay beside me with one hand still holding my coat. The violent heat had left her skin. Her pulse had slowed to a steady rhythm. She opened her eyes a few seconds later. For once, the Doom Prophet had nothing dramatic ready. You are alive, I told her. Morella touched my face as though checking whether the system had lied. Morella gave a weak smile. So are you. Relief replaced the panic in her voice. I helped her sit up. The movement made a loose vine brush her shoulder, and she flinched hard enough to grab me again. Her old sensitivity had survived the poison. The cucumber consequences remain undefeated, I said. Morella glared at me with very little energy. Mention that vegetable again, and I will test whether your new armor reflects emotional damage. She was definitely recovering. She tried to stand. Her knees folded, and I caught her before she hit the roots. Morella gripped my shoulder. Do not look pleased. I was checking whether your dramatic timing survived. It survived you, she said. That proves it is immortal. Her voice was weak, but the bite had returned. So had her choice. I checked the follower bond. Twyla, Briar, and Freya remained active in their separate lanes. Sabine's bond still carried the pressure of her unresolved worm fight. Morella was safe enough to move. We had allies waiting and one unresolved battle already running. Leaving the flower basin would have been the reasonable move. Reasonable moves had a poor survival record around me. One detail kept bothering me. The hidden Tier 7 beast had owned every advantage. Its pollen tracked Morella, and the concentrated dose poisoned me. We spent our weakest stretch behind a thin wall of roots. No attack came. The vine stayed loose, and nothing moved behind the trees while I could barely stand. The pale flowers had even turned toward our hiding place. Whoever controlled them had waited for the poison to finish us. I looked toward the flower basin. The pale blossoms still faced our position. Morella followed my gaze. You think it stayed close? I think something watched long enough to miss the easiest kill of its life. Morella pushed herself upright against the tree. That does not sound like relief. It sounds like a clue. Walking away meant leaving a Tier 7 attacker beside 4 separated allies. The commission also required 1 verified Tier 7 victory. I refused to let the hidden beast choose the next victim. I drew Nightblood Greatsword and returned to the basin. Marilla tried to follow. The first step almost dropped her again. Stay where the pollen is thin, I told her. If the vines move, scream. Marilla braced against the tree. You make recovery sound very romantic. You chose the vampire with a vegetable weapon, Marilla answered. My standards were compromised by poison. Fair. Marilla stayed near the dry ground where the pollen was thinner. Her death wail remained ready if anything moved behind me. The field held hundreds of pale pink flowers with wide petals and dark centers. Every cluster carried some of the sweet scent that clung to Marilla. The vines that had bound her all curved toward the basin's center. I followed their direction instead of checking every flower at random. The scent strengthened with every step. I pressed the flat of Nightblood Greatsword against one ordinary cluster. Every stem bent under the pressure, floated back upright, and ignored me. The next cluster released a thin cloud of pollen. The wraith pendant cooled against my chest, but the weak dose lacked the crushing pressure of the original trap. Those blossoms carry poison and stay passive. I kept moving toward the stronger scent. I moved deeper. Most flowers bent, shed petals, or drifted with the water. None tried to avoid the sword. Then one flower leaned away before my boot touched the water beside it. I stopped. Its petals held perfectly still. I tapped one petal with the flat of the sword. The flower twitched. I tapped the blossom beside it. Nothing happened. I touched the suspicious one again, lighter this time. Its stem pulled half an inch deeper into the mud. Marilla saw the retreat from behind me. That one moved. I kept the sword in place. Plants move, Marilla pointed at it. That one looked guilty. Fair distinction. I crouched beside the flower. Its stem was thicker than the others, and the center carried the strongest concentration of the sweet scent. When I pressed one petal between my gloved fingers, heat moved through the fabric and faded against the wraith pendant. The flower trembled. I lifted its outer leaves with the sword tip. The stem pulled away from the blade and tried to settle among the ordinary blossoms. Marilla stayed behind me with one hand gripping my coat. The field had almost killed us once. Now one flower was trying to play ordinary. I still needed proof that this was the Tier 7 siren bloom instead of another poisoned decoy. Blood assimilation had identified living targets through direct contact all story long. One taste would tell me whether the same poison lived inside it. My most reliable test remained the most ridiculous. I looked at the flower. Marilla looked at me. Marilla shook her head. No, reminded her. I have sampled worse things. Marilla stared at me. You bit Briar during a death match. I showed her my fangs. And it worked. Marilla pressed both hands over her face. The cursed equipment department has taken your judgment. This is cursed vampire logic. Separate department. I leaned closer and smelled the center of the flower. The scent matched the poison on Marilla exactly. The petals folded inward before I touched them again. I exposed my fangs. The flower jerked backward so hard that mud sprayed across my boots. A frightened voice came from inside the closed petals. Please, the flower begged, don't taste me.